Welcome, Climate Viewers. This is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News at ClimateViewer.com. And saw the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Dane Wigington interview. And I got a lot of requests to react to this. So let's just get into it. If you're watching this anywhere else and you haven't been to my YouTube channel already, come over to YouTube at ClimateViewer on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. If you want to check out all my things, connect.climateviewer.com. You'll find ClimateViewer News, ClimateViewer Maps, and weathermodificationhistory.com. Additionally, in the details, you can find ways to support the channel and all of that sort of stuff. So what we're going to do today is we're going to, I don't know exactly how much of this we're going to play because it is an hour and I'm long-winded as it is. But we'll go ahead and just start this out because there's a couple glaring omissions that happen right at the beginning that I think that, let's just be real. This is not one of your typical Jim Lee videos, okay? I'm at the point now where I'm going to just say exactly how I feel. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. And this is probably going to aggravate a whole lot of people. That being said, let's get into it. So let me go ahead and fire this away.
Most environmentalists today focus on climate, and climate is a real issue.
Pause. Climate is a real issue. Pollution is a real issue. Pollution. Climate change, global warming. If you try to conflate those two, I'm going to have a problem, but please.
And I've spent 40 years looking at that science, but what we've seen over the past couple of years is that issue has been captured, hijacked in many ways by the World Economic Forum and particularly by Bill Gates. They aggravate the problem and then sell us the solution.
Agreed.
And of course, the solution that they want for climate are more social controls, the big solution of geoengineering projects, which of course Bill Gates is funding all over the world. And today I want to talk about geoengineering, and particularly as it's related to climate, because it is a threat that the environmental community needs to know about, and the rest of us need to know about it.
Agreed.
It is a threat that is probably as dangerous to us as climate change itself. And that's why I've invited...
Oh, whoa. Pump the brakes. Geoengineering is as dangerous as climate change. See, this is where I started to get a little aggravated. I promised my wife I wouldn't cuss. Let's see how long that promise keeps up. This is the definition of slave speak. It is language that is used to maintain the master-slave relationship. If you use terms that are high-level descriptors that have different meanings to different individuals based on personal beliefs, then that is a high-level descriptor. A low-level descriptor is apple, orange, a bear. We all know what these things are. Nobody's going to argue with you that an apple is an apple, an orange is an orange, and a bear can eat you. Climate change, good, evil, God, government, chemtrails, climate change, geoengineering. These are all high-level descriptors. These are the definition of slave speak. These are words that mean different things to different people. So anytime you encounter anybody, whether it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or anybody, and they're using these terms, say, please give me a better what is your definition of climate change? And if they say global warming, laugh at them and move on. Boy, there's so much love for RFK in the chat. I'm love you guys. I did not expect this, but give it up, man. My late fee, Jenna. Thank you so much for the super chat. Oh my god. Let's get it, people. This is going to be an interesting one because I have many mixed feelings about both of the individuals in this video, and I'm going to try to decipher as much of the truth as possible.
Invited today to talk to us Dane Wigington, who is the producer of the groundbreaking climate engineering documentary film, The Dimming.
Now, I want you all to know this also. As many people have emailed me and contacted me saying, please react to this RFK interview, I would say 100 to 1,000 times as many people have said, Jim, do a reaction to The Dimming. And I started out to make a reaction called The Dumbing, but being that it's a 2-hour documentary and there's so much in there that I would literally have to I'd have to break it into a series to explain how much dumbification is going on in this documentary. But so I digress. We'll move along.
And Dane has a background in solar energy. He was a former employee of Bechtel.
Red flag.
And was a licensed contractor in California and Arizona. He's devoted the last 20 years of his life to in-depth research on the issue of covert global climate engineering operations and the effort to expose and to halt them. His personal residence was featured as a cover article in the world's largest renewable energy magazine, Home Power. He manages a wildlife preserve next to Lake Shasta.
So he's rich.
In Northern California, Dana has appeared in numerous films. And
he keeps calling him Dana, which, I'm sorry, like, Dane keeps a straight face throughout this shit, which is hilarious to me. But yeah, he keeps calling him Dana. It's kind of priceless.
Interviews in his effort to educate the public on the extremely dire environmental and health dangers that we face from the ongoing global climate intervention program. So welcome to the podcast, Dana. I'm so glad that you could join me.
Thanks for joining us, Dana.
It's a pleasure and an honor, Robert. And your description is very accurate and on target. And the paradox, the irony here is that we have a global power structure that thinks they can counter the damage already done by human activity, anthropogenic activity, which is in a sense a form of geoengineering because we're altering the planet's life support systems. And they are trying to sell us doing even more intervention as a form of a cure, much like you described the pharmaceutical industrial complex mentality.
The geoengineering is a pollution-based solution for pollution. And we can agree on that. I know RFK's voice is literally like, somebody scratching nails over the tonsils of an 80-year-old smoker. But you're just going to have to deal with it. I mean, get over it, okay? Get over it.
And this is the climate engineering issue itself, what we would argue at geoengineeringwatch.org, that there can't be any legitimate discussion about climate or the state of the climate from any perspective without addressing this first and foremost. We would also argue that the state of the climate is even worse than we are being told, and climate engineering is further fueling that process, not mitigating it.
So, if you guys don't know this, Dana is a really big global warming believer.
Okay, so let's start with one thing that a lot of people have heard about, and
if I literally had to do this exact same interview, even RFK says I'm gonna have to push back because he smells BS. All right. At least 3 times that I counted, it might have been 4 or 5, but Dane says something, RFK says, I got to push back on this because, he knows that what little reputation he has to try to keep it. And this is a classic example of why I, say there is a way that you can speak to the public and you can push your fear porn and you can do all of that sort of stuff. But whenever you're talking to elected officials or you're talking to scientists, if you come with that BS, you're likely going to get dismissed. Okay. Why am I calling him Dana? Because RFK Jr. introduced him as Dana. He's 3 times. You mean to roll it back? I'm not going to roll it back. We don't have enough time for that. But yeah, he called him Dana like 3 times. So I'm just picking. It's funny to me.
Nobody really knows what to think about it, but chemtrails are chemtrails real? And tell us about them.
Are chemtrails real? This is a trick question, but try at it, Dana.
Let's start with the appropriate place to start. What we're seeing in our skies are not condensation trails in almost all cases. They are sprayed particulate trails, and we're not speculating. We have up close film footage of military tankers and commercial, nozzles visible, turning on and off. Geoengineeringwatch.org, as a part of the film The Dimming, at great effort and expense, we acquired a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab, put top scientists in it, took samples at altitude behind heavy aircraft. We sampled what they were emitting. The sample was processed at one of the top testing institutions in the world. We found exactly what we knew we would find: climate engineering elements, starting with aluminum, which is named in one of the most significant climate engineering patents. And
that's my patent list, by the way. He stole that from my website.
Climate engineers themselves have stated their goal of putting tens of millions of tons of aluminum nanoparticles into the atmosphere annually as part of solar radiation management to block some of the sun's incoming thermal energy with no consideration of the consequences whatsoever.
So, okay, this is a classic conspiracy theory, right? Chemtrails. People who talk about chemtrails are regarded as tinfoil hats. So tell us, what proof do we have that chemtrails are happening, and who is doing it? Because you see, I'm on a flight path coming into LAX, and I see commercial aircraft with contrails coming out of there.
Oh God, did he just say contrails in the presence of Darth Wigington? Because I'm sure his blood is boiling right now that RFK just said the word contrail. It's got to be driving him crazy.
Their tails. So, and those aren't chemtrails.
Those aren't chemtrails.
Where are those? I assume. Are chemtrails, are they putting the aluminum particulates in commercial aircraft, or is this all military aircraft or civilian contractors? And, what kind of evidence do we have that it's going on?
Unless you're seeing a plane landing with perhaps a wing vortex, which is certainly a benign phenomenon, or a fuel dump, if you're seeing an aircraft emitting a trail at altitude, even a commercial aircraft, the chances are almost certain that is a sprayed dispersion or a fuel additive happening in that aircraft, which is also part of climate engineering. All
right, that's the only time you're going to hear him during this entire hour say the word fuel. And I'm going to back it up because this part's important. Host is very disrespectful. Sharon H., the host, Jim Lee, me, I am the foremost expert on this on the internet, period, end of story. This guy may have 100 and something thousand subscribers. This guy may be rich and work for Bechtel. This guy may have everybody fooled by his pseudoscience, but the host can be as disrespectful as he wants to be because I have no shackles, and the Illuminati did not fund this double wide that I'm in currently.
Unless you're seeing a plane landing with perhaps a wing vortex, which is certainly a benign phenomenon, or a fuel dump, if you're seeing an aircraft emitting a trail at altitude, even a commercial aircraft, the chances are almost certain that is a sprayed dispersion or a fuel additive happening in that aircraft.
It's either a sprayed dispersion or a fuel additive. And he'll never go back to fuel additive, but let's get real quick. So, are we on this one? So, I'm going to show you this real quick, and we'll bring it up to full screen. Now, I want you to tell me what you guys see. Because I see a lot of those chemtrails, okay? I see a lot of the chemtrails coming in. But why don't I see any here? And why don't I see any here? Explain this to me. Why don't I see chemtrails if they're sprayed particulate emissions, as Dane is saying? Why are they only in this moist volume of air and they're not everywhere else? Can anybody tell me why? I'll zoom out some so you can see how big this is. We're over Winnipeg in Canada. You can see these lines here, clear as day. Can anybody tell me why? Because those, are they contrails? Are they chemtrails? Are they intentional geoengineering where they sprayed out of pipes and pumps? Because that's what he's going to insinuate. That's what he insinuates in the Deming. That's the whole problem with this BS narrative, is that none of this is pollution. None of this is all, he talks about the fact that he flew up into the, sky, and they found he has done all video patents, government's own emissions documents. Jack, I did those patents, okay? The Lyndon Johnson video that he has at the beginning of every show came from weathermodificationhistory.com. I ripped that video. He has literally done none of the research. He literally rides off the back of other people. He takes their research and then he twists it. End of story. Just because you don't know this, because I'm shadow banned. How is he not? Because he's rich and he's full of you know what. So if you want to keep the propaganda machine rolling, you want to BS people, I've watched the Deming 3 times. I literally could go through that entire film and point out every single lie and prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, given, I would still say about 60% of it, I would agree with. But the 40% is enough to really tip the scales in the fact, on the side of, we got a serious effing problem here. Okay? So anyway, and he says, so is this about money? I don't know. Not for me, because I'm not making any money. You can go look. I mean, what? I got like $200 a month in Patreon. You think this I'm doing this for the $60 I get on AdSense? I wasn't even gonna make a fucking, let me be real with you people real quick. I literally was gonna start my video at 6 o'clock and I couldn't bring myself to do it. Why? The truth of the matter, I am fucking depressed. I am burnt out. I am making no money at this. I've been doing this for 14 years. I have to put up with people talking crap about, you know, my motivations. So, in fact, am I actually hurting Dane in any way by reacting to this? No, I'm actually promoting his damn website right now. In fact, everybody go watch the Deming. Watch it end to end. Go to geoengineeringwatch.org. Read everything he's got there. And then I want you to do the same thing. Make the effort to go to weathermodificationhistory.com and read the timeline articles. Read the timeline posts. Go into the newspaper vault. 841 newspapers. You could spend the next year, only unintelligent people cuss. I'm going to break my rule right now. Fuck off, Sharon. Get over it. Like, literally, only stupid people cuss. These people. This is, I'm telling you, like, am I debunking Mike Morales too? No. Mike knows that I disagreed with him on a lot of things. Mike and I were friends to the end. Just because somebody has a different opinion doesn't mean that I hate them, I want to destroy them. It means I disagree with their ideas. And on the case of Dane Wigington, and in this interview, there are some fundamental facts that make me go facepalm. I'm going to point them out. So let's just go back to the video.
Which is also part of climate engineering operations. Again, we have up close film footage of these aircraft, including commercial, turning on and off at altitude. That means that cannot be a condensation trail. These are up close images, KC-10s, KC-135, C-17 Globemasters, and commercial aircraft. We have extremely up close photographic
that looks
images
really bad.
of the retrofit nozzles mounted on the wing pylons of commercial.
You see that? That right there. That is evidence of chemtrails. Evidence that those little pipes right there, that's what they're pumping the chemtrails out. Did you guys know that? You didn't know that. That's proof right there. That photo.
Commercial aircraft aimed into the exhaust jet stream. We are not implicating commercial pilots. We are not implicating commercial personnel. They are not involved to our knowledge, but their aircraft in many cases are being used. If you remember when the big luggage situation came into play in the airlines around 2002, that suddenly it was a big concern how much luggage you carried on, how much weight there was, and so forth. And that is about the period in time when we feel the commercial industry was.
All right, let's deal with this now. Michael Kahn, I see planes with no seats, tanks of chemicals instead. Okay. You mean like this? You mean like that? Is this what you're talking about? These types of things? Take a peek inside a 747-8 test plane. Okay? And what you see is these photos. Let me go down here to screw with it. All right, where are we at? These. This is what you see? Because this is in every single, chemtrail website I've ever been to, every single, little trailer on every chemtrail YouTube channel. These are called ballast tanks. Okay? Ballast tanks are used in testing flights. They rush water around the interior. I mean, seriously, dude. I've been doing this for 14 years. I have been sent hundreds of these sorts of pictures. Here's another one. Ballast tanks inside military aircraft. No, that's the geoengineering chemicals. Don't you know? It's to test the balance of the plane. Paul Brediger just said so. They are literally to simulate somebody 400 pounds rushing from the front of the plane to the back of the plane, from the side of the plane to the side of the plane. That way they can actually simulate what it would be like if the weight distribution of a plane in altitude rapidly changed. Would it throw the planes off? Would it tilt them? That sort of thing. But it's used in all of Dane's stuff. Everybody's. You can't single Dane out on that one. Ballast tanks, look it up. Ballast, B-A-L-L-A-S-T tanks. My God. I've been doing this for 14 damn years, and I'm telling you what, I get sent photos like this, and people are like, oh, look, I've got these, Donald Trump was on a chemtrail plane. It was on Twitter. And I literally looked up the serial numbers for the actual bottles and then was able to find the original article, the original photos, all of that sort of thing. But this is common in the chemtrail tinfoil hat world. It's just commonplace. He also showed the spraying, the on-off spraying. How about this one? I'm going to do you one better. This one's pretty famous. Tanker enemy. You got an E3 AWACS, all right, under a C-17 Globemaster, flying in formation. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and speed it up to the part where, and then the AWACS spray stops, all right? You can see it right here. Ooh, there goes the contrails, the chemtrails, the plane farts, the clouds made by the jet fuel burning in the atmosphere. And then it falls out of formation, and then the engines turn back on, and then you have spray. So people want to say that this is all about, this is proof positive right here. Things like this, that they have an on-off switch, that they can spray chemicals whenever they like. The plane, literally, you can see it. It's right here underneath it. And then it slowly, after refueling, drops down, still dropping. It's right here. It's dropping. It's dropping. Why is it dropping? Because engines aren't on. That's why it's falling behind it and it's falling down lower. And then boom, kick engines into overdrive. Now we got clouds. Okay? Believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. One of the oldest sayings in the world: believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. And I'm going to tell you what, I can remember me back in 2012 believing everything I heard and everything I saw. And you know what? I made an ass out of myself too many times. I learned from the past. I did not repeat it. And I'm telling you what, I've been able to speak to the top scientists in the world on this topic. I can speak their language and I can nail them to the wall. I can go up to the United States EPA in a hearing and I can say everything I said in 2015. It's still true today. And none of it comes from a pump or a pipe. Commercial airlines emit metals. Those metals make clouds. That the metals come from jet fuel. And it is burnt. No pumps, no pipes. End of story on that one.
Utilized more heavily for much lighter payloads than a military plane can carry. And certainly these are automated systems. So again, we're not implicating commercial pilots or personnel, although we are working with some that behind the scenes are leaving geoengineering watch.org printed materials covertly in pilot lunchrooms and so forth. But again, as far as this not being condensation, let's look at another factor. All military tankers and all commercial aircraft are fitted with what's known as a high bypass turbofan jet engine. That's a jet-powered fan.
This is the biggest lie of all. And this is why everything Dane says is flawed. And this idea was promulgated by a dude named Russ Tanner. And I remember when it started because I was still here. High bypass turbofans cannot produce contrails. High bypass turbofans cannot produce clouds. Biggest lie ever told.
80% of the air that moves through that engine is not combusted. That engine by design is nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail except under rare and extreme circumstances. And beyond all this, I would ask people to believe what they see with their own eyes. When you see an aircraft leaving a trail clear across the horizon that suddenly shuts off and it leaves nothing, on the rest of its journey. Look at
I'm gonna
another
go back
factor.
through that one more time.
All military tankers and all commercial aircraft are fitted with what's known as a high bypass turbofan jet engine. That's a jet-powered fan. 80% of the air that moves through that engine is not combusted. That engine by design is nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail except under rare and extreme circumstances. And beyond all this, I would ask people to believe what they see with their
own. All right, so Dane, I hate to disagree with you, but how about this one? More efficient aircraft create more contrails. I do agree. Up in CT, you know what? Up, you've been so good. How do I add as moderator? You've been granted the blue. Pay attention to him. He's obviously been here longer than some of you people. High bypass jet engines make more contrails than older ones. Contrail-induced cloudiness may increase on par or more rapidly than CO2 emissions because of more efficient aircraft designs, aka high bypass turbofans. This comes from the alternative fuel effects on contrails and cruise emissions access to flight experiments, where they were testing biofuels for contrail control. And this is by Bruce Anderson from NASA's Langley Research Center in conjunction with Ulrich Schumann from Germany's DLR, which is their version of NASA. And this is the science of it right here, as you can see. And I'm going to just go to full screen on this one so that I'm not even in the picture. But typically what you have is air into O2, fuel, CnHm plus S, complete combustion products, CO2, water, nitrogen, oxygen, SO2, sulfur dioxide. But and that's in a perfect world. But actual combustion products, CO2, H2O into O2, nitrous oxide, carbon monoxide, hydrochloric acid, soot, and SOX. So they're like sulfur monoxide, sulfur dioxide, all that sort of thing. So what does that do? What does soot do? Soot affects atmospheric processes, microphysical processes, which changes radiative forcing components, contrails, soot, all of these over here, sulfuric acid and soot lead to contrails, which make clouds. Okay? Lee et al. 2009, Atmospheric Science. I'll give you a second opinion on this one in just a second. But as you can see, if you add up all of the greenhouse gases, they have these little charts and bars like this, and then you have induced cirrus cloudiness right here, and the uncertainty bar. It's actually much worse than they said. And I covered this in the last video. But, hey, don't trust me. Don't trust the scientists. Don't trust 100 references. You can just trust your gut on this one. But high bypass jet turbo engines, this is Ulrich Schumann in the year 2000 saying newer engines extract more heat and to perform work, have cooler exhaust, higher relative humidity. So Dane is 100% wrong on this fundamental fact that high bypass turbofans will not produce clouds. I'm going to give you a second reference so that you can really understand what's going on here. Let me scroll way up here. So how does this actually work? This is on Cirrus Clouds Matter on ClimateViewer. All the references you could ever want to shake a stick at, and then some. In my frequently asked questions section, go to what makes a cirrus cloud. See it right there? What makes a cirrus cloud? Click that. Answer: soot, sulfur, metal nanoparticles, water vapor, and static electricity that makes things stick. It's really that simple. There's no pipes. There's no pumps. And right here, this is from Particles and Cirrus Cloud POSI to Final Report 2004 through 2007. First estimates of potential aircraft soot effects on cirrus in the ECHAM-4, depending on how background cirrus form. Soot may lead to increases or decreases in ice crystal number and density, provided aircraft soot particles are a good ice nuclei. They are a cloud seed. The soot itself is a cloud seed. Okay, let's flip the script right here so you guys can see it better. This is from the United States Air Force. Solid and volatile engine particulate emissions for Fischer-Tropsch, HEFA, JP8, and blends, August 2012. Again, there's Bruce Anderson because he's working on the biofuel program. And you move down here and you say, well, what actually, what is causing the clouds? Fuel sulfur responsible for rapid volatile particulate matter formation in plume. So fuel sulfur has a big deal to do with this. Sulfate aerosols create nucleation mode and coat soot particles. Sulfuric acid wraps around soot, and that is what the water condenses on. So when you have a contrail, water is condensing on soot wrapped in sulfuric acid, filled with all of these metals, and that is what makes a cloud. That's what makes a cloud that sticks around. That's what it makes a cirrus cloud. Okay? Moving down the page, aerosol cloud interactions are one of the main uncertainties in climate research because they barely understand anything about it. This was Ulrich Lohmann talking about ECHAM-5 ham back in 2013. To this day, it is still in the same area. They don't understand, what's going on completely. And of course, are they filled with metals? We'll flip this again. Even the IPCC reports say metal particles comprising elements such as aluminum, titanium, chromium, iron, nickel, and barium are estimated to be present in the parts per billion by volume level at nozzle exit planes, so jet exhaust. But they reference something CIAP 1975 and Fordyce and Shelby 1975. Tell me why the damn IPCC is using references from 1975 in their exhaust particulates section. So I wanted something a little more recent than that. And of course, I found this: chemical characterization of freshly emitted particulate matter from aircraft exhaust using a single particle mass spectrometry. The detected metallic compounds were all internally mixed with soot particles. The most abundant metals in the exhaust were chromium, iron, molybdenum, sodium, calcium, aluminum, vanadium, barium, copper, cobalt, nickel, lead, manganese, and the list goes on here, were also detected. So abundant versus also detected right there. I put all of that into one single infographic for you. So all the ones marked in red, those are the metals that are in the soot. Don't believe me? Let's get a second source. How about straight from the United States military? Trace element and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon analysis of jet engine fuels, Jet A, JP5, and thanks for the sub, and JP8. And you can see right here, right at the top, in the jet fuel, elements detected in jet fuel. Jet A, not detected. Hey, it was a bad day. They didn't find any aluminum in that Jet A. Find that hard to believe. JP5, 2,144 parts per billion. JP8, 9,360 parts per billion. The one that gets ignored all the time, calcium. is also a metal. 555 parts per billion Jet A, 5,000 parts per billion JP5, 31,000 parts per billion in JP8. So you can see all of the metals that are in the jet fuel that make the clouds. Much more information on that, including how about they use biofuels, with, and Dane's going to talk about this later in this video, a surfactant, Jatropha biodiesel, a fuel derived from the crushed seeds of the Jatropha plant, that is a biofuel, water, and a surfactant, then blended in different portions with alumina nanoparticles. Adding aluminum nanoparticles to the jet fuel, in addition to outperforming regular biofuel, these nanoparticle spiked fuels produce significantly lower quantities of nitrogen oxide and carbon monoxide gases and created less smoke. However, they should be used judiciously because they tend to entrain in human bodies, which RFK brings up in this interview as well, that aluminum nanoparticles are dangerous. It should be a big no-no. But, I think this one really says it all. And of course, it's been deleted. So I have my you can't delete any. There's no takebacks on the internet button where I just click that and it takes me over to archive.org. And yes, it has been. Oh, wow. So now they're going to try to pull a fast one on me because it redirected. Let me grab the original URL. Copy link address. Come over here. And there. See what they did there? They redirected the URL to another URL and then said that the article had been deleted. But you can't get past this hacker, buddy. You can't get past this hacker. Lead line clouds from RCS Chemistry World. And it shows it right here. That these are lead. This ice crystal formation. Let me get it back in the center so you guys can see it. Get out of the way. This ice crystal collected from a cloud at Switzerland's Jungfraujoch research station contains lead dispersed from human activities. So this is actually an ice crystal from a cirrus cloud that came from a contrail that turned into a cirrus cloud, and it is soot and lead in the ice. PB inclusions, lead. Man-made metals came from jet fuel, no pumps, no pipes, but, like Dane said, these can't even create clouds. It is a damn shame that this guy is the leading voice of the chemtrail movement. Although he never uses the word chemtrail, he only says geoengineering. He believes that global warming is going to kill us all, that the climate's much worse than we even think, and that everything is a secret covert geoengineering program because high bypass engines can't even create clouds. GTFO.
Own eyes. When you see an aircraft leaving a trail clear across the horizon that suddenly shuts off and it leaves nothing on the rest of its journey, or you see grid patterns in the sky one day and nothing the next with similar atmospheric patterns.
Grid patterns in the sky, covered it 100 times. That is called flight routing. Okay. There are highways in the sky. It is all controlled from the next gen transportation system in the United States at the FAA. The pilots aren't even flying at this point. They literally get up in the air and the computer tells them where to fly, how much fuel to burn, all of that. It's something called the Aviation Environmental Design Toolkit. And then over in EU, they have what's called Eurocontrol. Same idea, that they have flight paths in the sky. They are highways. This is not something new. In fact, let's do a little fun experiment down memory lane real quick. We'll go to weathermodificationhistory.com. Give me 1 second. And I want you guys to see this. Just because, it's fun to point these things out. Because Most people don't know this stuff. I mean, let's be real. Artificial clouds, and we'll come here. We'll go to this one. And I'll drop it in chat because, you know, I mean, this is all, you know, made up. Now, we'll just go down here to the newspaper section because this, you just can't beat this. Jet trails, dim sun, Palm Springs gripes. This is 1958, people. 1958. And basically they say the contrails are not disappearing, but are breaking down into a haze and creating a cloud-like appearance in the sky. Okay? This is 1958. The Air Force so far, with the unlimited expanse and barren, uninhabited land in the West, does such activity have to be centered over a resort area, which is offering the visitor cloudless skies and unlimited sunshine? As you know, our entire economy is dependent on the tourist trade, which is predicated on our bright sunshine and warm climate. Recently, our sky has resembled a mob of exuberant skyriders performing an aerial circus. The Air Force so far is flabbergasted. No doubt in time, it will recover its aplomb sufficiently to give Sond the usual answer to all congressional inquiries. The matter will be investigated. The Air Force figures its jets couldn't blot out the sun short of a wing-to-wing mass flight like the European bombing raids of World War II. But if that were true, then why? This is December 1958. This is the damnedest thing I've ever seen in my life, in the entire history of weather modification history, the 14 years I've been doing this. This is a middle finger to every single person. I want you to understand the seriousness of what I'm about to show you. This is a double barrel middle finger to every single person who believes the chemtrail conspiracy, who says that contrails have just recently started doing this. This is all brand new. It's pipes and pumps and all of this. Here's the Air Force, double middle finger right here. Open image in a new tab so you can see how big this actually is. That is a really big ass image, Jim. We're gonna have to zoom back a little bit. So December 1958, Palm Springs, California is complaining about jet fuel and contrails blocking out the sun. What does the Air Force say? The United States Air Force in the desert sun, January 1959, less than a month later, responds, Air Force gives village two choices: live with the trails or move. The vapor trail story is explained to City Councilman Ted McKinney, Chamber of Commerce manager, and all these other blah, 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 by Brigadier General President Prescott M. Spicer, commander of the 27th Air Division, during a summit conference on vapor trail problem at Norton Air Force Base. And he basically says, let's face it, man. I'm going to zoom right into this part because this is just priceless. Let's face it, man, said a crisp-talking, star-studded general. You'll either have to live with the vapor trails or move the city of Palm Springs. The resort area, it appears, is known as the Palm Springs intersection, the freeway interchange of all West Coast aerial traffic. Anybody feeling kind of weird about this? So city officials and civic leaders, in an apparently unanimous unspoken agreement, decided that a peaceful coexistence with the Air Force was the wisest course. Because the grid patterns happen because there are highways in the sky. They literally call it the freeway interchange of all West Coast aerial traffic. Look at this research. Look at the facts. Look at all the facts. Look at Dane's facts. Look at all of geoengineeringwatch.org. Look at all the facts on weathermodificationhistory.com. You use your gut. Don't trust me. Don't trust just one piece of paper I have. Don't trust just one, position that I take. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm wrong. When in 1958, the Air Force was literally like, look, bruh, there's highways in the sky. And if you don't like it, move the damn city. Air Force gives village two choices: live with the trails or move the damn city. But this is all just a conspiracy. It is all pumps, pipes, all of that. I don't believe that shit for 1 second based on what I see. Because what I see is going back to 1948, mystery of the Point Augusta Sky Trails. 1951, plane vapor trails. This has been going on forever. It's a pollution problem for sure.
Of course, something is clearly wrong. And we see loops and aircraft making large configurations and
loops, like planes circling, they're in a landing, queue. So they have to, has anybody ever flown before and been in one of those loops where you're literally just like flying in a circle around an airport waiting to land?
X's and so forth that we believe is to mark the air current movement. But high bypass turbofan jet engine, by design, nearly incapable of making condensation trail.
Not true.
Nozzles visible, film footage turning on and off. And one more thing, if I could add to this, Robert.
Turning on and off, that's, there's a difference. I want to make it clear. There's a difference between military aircraft and commercial aviation. And if you go to, this is the best flight tracker on the planet. I'm going to give you guys this in chat. All of this is available on ClimateViewer 3D, so you guys can use it. But start using this one, because guess what? It's the only one you're going to find that has all of the military flights also. Not Flight Aware or Flight Radar 24 or any of those other ones. This one actually shows all flights, including military flights. They can't hide it. So, do you see what I see? Do you see what I see? Is that a highway in the sky? Is that a highway in the sky? How many straight lines do you see? Seriously. That is a serious highway in the sky right there. There's another one right there. And then when you have other ones going this way, what are you going to get? You got ones going this way. You got ones going this way. And the air is moving west to east. That's how you end up with grids in the sky. It is all computer controlled, period. Look it up. And if you want to know whether you're looking at a military or a commercial flight, you can come to this website and you can find out for damn sure. Okay? It shows right here. That is a Chinook helicopter. That is a Chinook military helicopter right there on ADSB Exchange. Sounds like I've sold out, mate. Shame. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. I am tired of the retards that roll around in my chat, the trolley ass people that roll into my chat thinking that they can judge somebody based on 5 minutes of what they say. Have never been here before, have never read a single thing that's on any of my websites, don't know the first thing about how complicated this topic is, and they take everything at face value. That's why I literally started this video by saying I literally wasn't even going to make a damn video tonight. I am literally on the precipice of just saying, screw it and moving on with my life. Because I don't think that I could literally grab people by the back of their head and make them drink the Kool-Aid. I'm like, it's all right there. Nobody has put the amount of work in that I have. Nobody. period. Point blank, end of story. I have stressed myself. I have gone to the mat. I have put a challenge out to debate anybody on the planet. And nobody's learned this shit. In the 14 years I've been doing this, nobody else has picked up that torch. That's why I'm still here. I'm still waiting. When I see somebody else doing it, I'm going to gladly say, it's your turn. And I'm going to move on with my damn life. But that being said, you want to track military flights? They're right here on ADSB Exchange. You can tell. I've been doing this longer than you. I have been literally going to every single flight that passes over my house and going, well, that was Delta. I live near a military base. Oh, that's a C-17 coming in. Okay. I can tell. What does the Bible say about pride? Sharon, I'm going to rename you Karen because you are literally here just to stoke shit. And I don't care about your opinions. In fact, get over it. Get over it. This is not pride. I am very, no, fuck that. I am super proud of what I've done. I have worked my ass off to bring the truth in every way, shape, or form and give it to you for free. 3 websites: my blog, my maps, my timeline. And I don't see anybody out there debunking any of it.
Certainly have seen all the B-17 bombers in World War II leaving the massive trails behind them, correct?
Yeah.
So we captured off the military archives film footage of one B-17 flying in formation under another, filming these massive dispersions from that aircraft. And we got film capture of that being shut off instantaneously in air. That aircraft didn't fall. The aircraft all around it continued to disperse. That aircraft continued to fly in formation. Clearly, there was some sort of beta testing going on, which would make sense because we know these programs were initially deployed immediately after World War II over the polar regions, which would make sense as well, because those are the air conditioners of the planet. They knew the poles were beginning to melt, and that would be the logical place for them to start. And then by the 50s, we had Stanford acknowledging a, quote, Arctic haze that contained aluminum in the haze, and they couldn't figure out where that aluminum was coming from. So again, I could go on and on with various puzzle pieces, but we ask people to look at the data, not to believe what we say, and to consider, and I know this will hit home, close to home for you, given your family's background, which I so respect and revere. We have President Lyndon Johnson on film, on the record, when he was vice president in '62, stating that we had the power to control the world's cloud layer then, 60 years ago, and quote, he who controls the weather controls the world. On film, on the record, that's the lead-in 30 seconds to every weekly Geoengineering Watch commercial-free global alert news broadcast, which is on 16 stations around the country. So maybe you've seen that, but for those listeners that haven't, I would encourage them to watch that.
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Now, you know how I know that Dane stole this video from weathermodificationhistory.com? Because I edited and smoothed it. That original video does not look like that. So he literally downloaded that from weathermodificationhistory.com. And it's right here. We'll go right back up to the home page, and I'll scroll over to here. The Lyndon Johnson, which is here. President Johnson approves weather warfare. And there's the original video.
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
But he said something even scarier. And this is the actual original. This is where it comes from. Because I give you all the references so you can see the original video is square. It's 4x3. I changed it to 16:9 for getting off the subject. But this is hella scarier than even that. Let's flip this. Control of space means control of the world. From space, the masters of infinity would have the power to control the Earth's weather, to cause drought and flood, to change the tides, and raise the levels of the sea. To raise the levels of the sea. I thought that was global warming. But as Lyndon Johnson puts it, to divert the Gulf Stream and change temperate climates to frigid, to make ice ages, to make places freeze. That's hella scarier than him talking about making some clouds. But that's the guy also that basically in this document authorized Operation Popeye and weather warfare over Vietnam as well. Laos operations right there. This is the original document where Lyndon Johnson authorized Operation Popeye. And that's from the Pentagon Papers. But anyway.
And it would seem that there would be thousands of pilots and thousands of people who would have to be aware of this program and be participating in it. How come we don't see more whistleblowers coming out, particularly people who are retired?
Excellent question. We have right now an illegal gag order on all the nation's weathermen, National Weather Service and NOAA. And that is a massive red flag. Why in the world would our government?
He says, why wouldn't more whistleblowers be coming out, from the airline industry? And he flips the script and he says, well, that's because NOAA and the weather service people, the weather guys, have a gag order. When has a gag order ever stopped a real whistleblower? Explain that to me. It doesn't.
Government feel the need to gag the weathermen. Next, we have massive compartmentalization. We know in Vietnam, for example, did the pilot flying the aircraft spraying Agent Orange on the ground, which eventually killed many U.S. soldiers, as you know, was he told that would kill his partner on the ground? Of course not. So it's massive compartmentalization. And those that do know, we would argue, are being told they're doing something benevolent. If it's military personnel, they're certainly being told they're doing something benevolent for the greater good. And now
Bob Lewis, Jim, Dane Wigington puts out a video every Saturday night. Not once have I ever heard him mention your name. Y'all don't need to. Oh, he deleted his own comment. You don't need to censor anybody. I'm good with it. Let the trolls roll. Bob, Dane has never mentioned my name because if you go to geoengineeringwatch.org or to any of his videos and you mention Jim Lee, ClimateViewer, ClimateViewer.com, ClimateViewer.org, or WeatherModificationHistory.com, not only will he delete your comment, he will ban you because he does not want anybody seeing any of my material. Alternatively, I have no problem with you seeing his material. In fact, I encourage you. Go to geoengineeringwatch.org, read everything on the entire damn website. Watch his videos. 60% of the time he's right. But I'm not censoring anybody in this chat. I'm not censoring anybody in the comments. I don't censor anybody. I want you to have as much information as possible. And where we disagree, I'm going to point it out. Period, point blank, end of story.
Let's add this.
But, you can do your own test. Go to geoengineeringwatch.org, comment on an article. Go to his YouTube channel, comment on a video. Go to anything Dane Wigington owns and drop weathermodificationhistory.com. Just that. Do it for yourself. Find out. Yes, he stole my work. We're going to get into that in just a second, because yes, he stole my list of 200 patents. I think it's going to pale in comparison to the 2,000 patents that I've got coming.
We know, according to the Washington Post, as far back as 1977, the Washington Post recorded that there had been no less than 239 open-air biological tests.
That's not a biological test. Operation Large Area Coverage was actually zinc cadmium sulfide, which it says down here at the bottom. I covered that on my article, in an article back in 2013 on on ClimateViewer.com. And I agree that yes, the military can be involved in secret programs, that if somebody is secretly geoengineering, I will bet my left testicle that it's the CIA. The CIA was involved in Operation Popeye. The CIA, they ran it. Henry Kissinger, the CIA, and the United States Air Force Weather Division, and the United States Navy out of China Lake. They're the ones that did weather warfare in Vietnam. The CIA did weather warfare over Cuba in the 1960s. They actually caused a drought in Cuba to kill Castro's sugar crops. The CIA, John Brennan, was like, hey, we've just, heard about geoengineering. It's a great idea. The CIA went to geoengineered Alan Robach and asked him, hey, if another country was modifying the climate over America, would we know about it? Every single time it goes back to the CIA. So I'm not going to give you some broad brush bullshit like Dana does. I'm going to tell you straight up, point blank, pointing the finger, the CIA. If anybody's doing secret government geoengineering, it's the CIA. Other than that, 99% of flights are pollution coming from jet fuel, because high bypass turbofans and jet fuel equal clouds.
Conducted on the U.S. population by the U.S. military without their knowledge or their consent. So again, there are so many factors that connect to this. And finally, given the severity of what we face, and I would argue we don't face global warming, we face something far worse. We face what would be scientifically termed an abrupt climate collapse. There are so many feedback mechanisms now that have been triggered, like the methane release happening in the Arctic.
There it is, methane doom. Global warming. We're all going to die. Global warming.
The acceleration of those events is so severe that I think it would be very naive for our population to believe that governments around the globe wouldn't engage in these operations without public knowledge or consent. And a final factor, we have a U.S. Senate document 800 pages long that outlines global cooperation between major governments, major superpowers. Even if they have, quote, otherwise adversarial relations, they will cooperate.
What is this 800? It's like, dude, come on, man. You really suck at your job. Like, he's like, oh, we also have this paper. It's 800 pages long. Well, guess what? I have it right here on weathermodificationhistory.com. Don't use the speculation. Go read it your damn self. It's called Weather Modification Programs, Policy, and Potential. It's right here. Senate, United States, Weather Modification Programs, Problems, Policy, and Potential. It is 645 pages long. It is available right here on archive.org, or you can download it directly from my website, because I made a PDF backup of it. But this is this one right here, 784 page version of it, and you can just flip through it and you can read it. I've read it. And guess what? Do you even know why this exists? The reason it exists is because of weather warfare over Vietnam. So they required that the United States government come to a full accounting of all weather modification activities because of weather warfare over Vietnam. I mean, T. Oliver keeps saying it. JP8 is jet fuel and the chemtrails. The first time the word chemtrail was ever used on the internet was an article about JP8 jet fuel. Period. End of story. That's what the first time the word chemtrail was used on the internet talking about clouds. That article was about JP8 jet fuel. End of story.
In the climate engineering operations, because you can't just climate engineer.
And it was in 1997, just so we're clear. I went all the way back, way back.
One country without affecting the entire world. Within that document, there is a provision for total legal immunity for anyone and everyone involved.
And it's mainly, I mean, the frightening thing about this, and I know that there's been many tests now that are showing accumulations of aluminum, even in places in very remote parts of the earth, in the soils, and it's hard to explain why that would happen. And people should know this: that aluminum was never a free molecule prior to the World War II era. Aluminum, all the aluminum on Earth is bound into silicate. And so it wasn't like there are many other metals like iron, et cetera, that are in the seawater, and that and zinc and magnesium, et cetera, that are free and biologically available. But aluminum was really not biologically available prior to World War II, prior to and particularly the airline industry. When aluminum smelting became very widespread. And then, of course, the aluminum got into our cookware, it got into aluminum cans, it got into food storage, etc. And we now know that aluminum gets stored in the brain, it crosses the blood-brain barrier,
Sure.
It has a high association with Alzheimer's
Facts.
and with many other brain injuries and other injuries. And so it's kind of frightening to think that somebody may be putting large amounts of bioavailable aluminum into the environment, spraying it in microscopic particulates from airplanes.
You're completely correct on every point. Thank you for bringing that point up, that aluminum does not exist naturally in the environment in free form, always bonded to other elements. And
Like silica.
we now have lab tests
Same.
from around the world, all of which contain some level of aluminum. That's what brought me into this fight. When I began to lose massive amounts of my solar power uptake, I spent my whole life trying to get out of the smoggy Southern California, moved to the Pacific Northwest, built this off-grid home, and was losing huge amounts of my solar power uptake from whatever these aircraft were emitting, which I knew could not be condensation, not to block 70 or 80% of my solar PV uptake on some days.
Now, this is where Dane and I fully agree. That, I said this when I went and spoke to the EPA, in Washington, D.C. Same idea, that you cannot have solar energy if you have clouds blocking out the sun. That is a serious freaking problem. That there are projections that by 2050, that my children's children won't be able to see stars. That terrestrial astronomy will be a thing of the past, that we will not be able to see stars because of these clouds made by planes. That is a serious freaking problem. And not being able to have your solar panels work because people are making clouds, big freaking problem.
And that doesn't mean there's an 80% reduction in overall light. It just means you have to have direct sunlight for solar panels to function. I began to test my precipitation, did not want to find that primary element of aluminum, but I did. I continued to test my precipitation. In the course of 18 months, the amount of aluminum in a single precipitation event went from 7 ppb, parts per billion, to 3,450 ppb in a single rain event. That's highly toxic rain. So much aluminum is falling in our region of Northern California. It has altered soil pH values from 10 to 12 times toward alkaline. Rain pH should be about 5.6 based on atmospheric carbon loading. We're seeing now 6.6, 6.8 in some cases. We're testing the individual precipitation events. The precipitation that is very high in aluminum is actually pushing the pH value toward neutral. And in regard to where else that might be coming from, because that's a question people ask. Maybe there's some industry across the street from me or so forth. We know from CARB, California Air Resources Board, that when they're testing from the aerosols from China, Japan, Asia, there's nothing between us and them. And CARB studies do not show aluminum migrating across the ocean. Mercury can, of course, because it converts to a gaseous state, but not aluminum. So where is that much metal coming from? And
it's coming from aircraft and ship tracks. That all the international shipping that comes over, he lives in Mount Shasta, California, if you don't know this. And off the coast of California is what? Massive tankers bringing all of the shiny little shits from China. And those tankers put out massive plumes of exhaust, which is filled with what? The exact same metals that are found in jet fuel. The same metals that are found in jet exhaust are found in ship exhaust. So he's getting a twofold dose of aluminum because he lives in California, Stan. Seriously. Show him the ship tracks, Jim. Yeah. I mean, I'm literally, what are we? 1 hour, 16 minutes. And this video, we played 16 minutes of it. I told you I was long-winded. I told you I don't think that I would be able to make it through this because there's so much. Ship tracks are worse than planes. They are monstrously worse than planes.
a final note.
For those who don't know, I brought this to the attention of Mike Morales. That's the reason that Mike Morales talked about bunker fuel and ship tracks is because of me. I showed Mike the information. I said, dude, bunker fuel, AMEG. This was back in 2012 when I started covering bunker fuel because the Arctic Methane Emergency Group, which Dane apparently is a member of, because it's all he talks about. Google methane site geoengineeringwatch.org. You'll see all the articles about methane, exploding methane on the poles and all this stuff. AMEG put out this strategic plan, and in it they said they wanted to use more bunker fuel to geoengineer the planet. This was in 2012. And in 2013, they sent a letter to all the world leaders saying, we need to geoengineer immediately, or by 2015, there will be no ice on the poles. So I started covering bunker fuel because of that back in 2012. And Mike, he really took the ball and ran with it, and he showed ship tracks every single time. And that's why, I love Mike for that, like he had the energy to do it while I'm busy, coding away at my website, not making as many videos as I should. Mike was always there showing the ship tracks, talking about the bunker fuel. You can go back to Mike's, some of his early videos, and you will literally see ClimateViewer.com, ClimateViewer.org, weathermodificationhistory.com in the details of every single video he made. At some point, he stopped doing it. I understand, you edit your video details all the time. There's only so much room, yada, yada. But Mike has been a good friend to me for a long time. And I thank him for, bringing that to the attention of so many people. But you can't make Dane talk about ship tracks. It's not even on his. In fact, he said he's got an article on his website that ship tracks are fake. They're actually from planes, and they're pumps and pipes coming from planes. No such thing as bunker fuel. No such thing as ship tracks. Dane says that's a conspiracy.
Viewers, your followers, can watch the world's most recognized geoengineer, Dr. David Keith, who works for Mr. Gates, works with Mr. Gates, works for Harvard as well.
It's about the fact, an uncomfortable fact, but it is a fact, that we have the technical ability to do this. They are all fast acting, they are cheap, and they are fundamentally imperfect. They're the problems of how you control something where An individual country can have tremendous leverage over the whole planet's climate, and where there are winners and losers in ways that really could be unpredictable. And I mean, not to frighten you, but I think you can imagine scenarios that lead to war.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change.
CIA.
One that has gained my personal
CFR.
attention is stratospheric aerosol injection.
There's all sorts of ways you could do this, but the standard idea has always been spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up.
The example many people cite was when the Mount Pinatubo volcano exploded. And all of this ash went into the air and had a cooling effect on the Earth.
And so people have long proposed since the mid-60s that you could artificially add dust to the stratosphere and cool the planet. Not that this would be a good solution for global warming, it would not. But it does show the way we're steadily developing the powers to manipulate the planet with comparative ease.
That sulfur in the lower atmosphere is masking some of the climate warming from CO2. So
is this the global dimming or something?
Yeah.
Other leading ideas basically to emulate what big volcanoes do, put material in the stratosphere to reflect.
That's Ken Caldera, and I'm telling you what, me and that guy have gone round and round and round on his Google group. He was wrong every time. It was priceless.
Sunlight.
So the problem is the following. If you add SO2 to the stratosphere, SO2 doesn't condense. So you might want to put alumina in. Alumina has a very high initial refraction. It's very small. It doesn't coagulate. And you can engineer particles that have particular properties. You can get them out of the stratosphere. You can concentrate particles in the poles.
costs are so cheap that the richest people on the planet could perhaps afford to buy an ice age.
It's extraordinarily cheap. I knew it was cheap when I found that they were quoting me in tons. It's also true that particles, as they get bigger, fall out a lot faster. We sort of step back and think, okay, well, how would you actually make particles in the stratosphere? This is really engineering now.
If it was aerosols in the stratosphere, it would likely be put there by airplanes.
Start with a fleet of just 2 or 3 kind of modified business jets. The basic idea is that if you let a plume off on an aircraft by just changing some little details, you can actually get much smaller particle size distributions by doing this kind of spraying.
So there are all sorts of side effects. I'll get to them.
And in almost all of the geoengineering proposals that they've talked about putting sulfur into the stratosphere, almost every single one of them says put sulfur in jet fuel. Not pump it out of a bottle, put it in the jet fuel. It's just the truth. So let me get this straight. They're going to pump it out of the fuel exhaust in the fuel, injectors into the jet engine and then burn it. And then it's going to make sulfur dioxide, sulfur monoxide, and sulfuric acid. Okay.
In a second, but if you put sulfuric acid in the stratosphere, for example.
Oh, did he just say sulfuric acid?
You could deplete stratospheric ozone.
Smaller size means more surface area, but more surface area means less ozone.
Is this stuff in the stratosphere going to be killing some number of people that are going to be sacrificed?
It's an obvious concern.
So if it kills 1 million people and we're only
bad.
doing 1% more, we're just killing 10,000 more people.
You can do math.
Okay.
But that's so killing people is not the objective here.
So if I made a decision, or if there was a collective decision to do a geoengineering program, and you put, say, the kind of program I think makes more sense to put about 1 million tons a year in, but let's say, you might end up killing many tens of thousands of people a year as a direct result of that decision.
And so the only thing that we can do to cool the planet, or that society can do to cool the planet, is deploy these sorts of technologies.
And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard. It's more like free riding on our grandkids. It's not really a moral hazard. It's more like free.
Dane has plenty of time to debate qualified guests, but never does beyond endless repetition of the same video clips of a few people he challenged at public meetings. Madison Payne says. Exactly right. Because he cannot withstand even RFK, who should be a friendly host, has to literally, say, all right, what you just said was bullshit. He says it like 3 times.
Free riding on our grandkids. It's not really a moral hazard. It's more like free riding on our grandkids.
And it means there are going to be winners and losers, just like there are winners and losers for CO2.
So he keeps saying this winners and losers thing. It's just getting to me. I guess I should probably point this out. So on ClimateViewer.com, up here at the top, and go to Geoengineering. I told you about the Google group. So what they have is Ken Caldera, that guy, and this is that same clip that he just showed. I have it here as well.
So if I made a decision, or if there was a collective decision to do a geoengineering program, and you put, say, the kind of program I think makes more sense to put about 1 million tons a year in, but let's say, anyway, you might end up killing many tens of thousands of people a year as a direct result of that decision.
So if you want to know, like, who's pushing geoengineering, these are all the people. These are the names: David Keith, Ken Caldera, Alan Robach, Ben Kravitz. 2 of the 3 are right there. There's Alan Robach. That's David Keith. But anyway, they keep talking about winners or losers, and this is from Ken Caldera's geoengineering group, and this is from PJ Irvine. SRM Geoengineering, how to deal with the losers. This is where the original thing came from. Now, I want you to know, this is from February 2010. That's how long I've been doing this, okay? And I was actually a part of this conversation. He says, it's likely that SRM geoengineering intervention will create winners and losers, and some nations may always be against any intervention whatsoever. So, could it be determined if any changes in the climate outside the target area had occurred as a result of the intervention during a 10-year trial? How would the aggrieved nations or peoples seek reparations for perceived negative impacts, scientifically proven or otherwise? If you kill people with geoengineering, how could they prove it, and how could they get their money back? How could they sue? SRM Geoengineering, how to deal with the losers. That's some shit. But that's the truth of the matter. And this is from their geoengineering group. I'm all over this thing. So like if you actually go in here, you can see all of my posts as well. Let me see if you can actually just search that right now. Yep, there's me talking to Ken Caldera. Don't believe me? I'll make it nice and big. Jim Lee, see there's the ClimateViewer logo. This is 2013. Playing with God, the ethics and politics of geoengineering. CIA backs $630,000 study into how to control the weather. Playing God with the planet. Hurricane hacking, the Department of Homeland Security. I got Ken Caldera into a whole lot of trouble with this one. It was pretty funny, actually. And you'll see here at the top. Let me go. See, they've deleted. When I got banned finally, they deleted a lot of what I wrote, but you can see right here. This is me to the geoengineering group, Jim Lee, 2013. Full article here. Did you know the good old boys of the DHS are working on steering hurricanes, and that Ken Caldera has a patent? And John Latham's like, hey, we could have done something about this. Have they looked at our marine cloud brightening thing? John Latham was actually at that meeting, which is kind of funny. And Stephen Salter, he's like, he said a whole bunch. I'm not going to get into this. I could get totally sidetracked with this, but he literally brings up his ideas for it. But they got pretty pissed with Ken Caldera because he never mentioned the fact that he was actually at congressional testimony. And is there like a page? Yeah, there's another page. Go back. But all of these are posts with me in them. And yeah, he got pretty butthurt because he got brought out by me. And I spent a lot of time debating with Ken Caldera and company back in 2012, 2013. Anyway, moving along.
But they're different winners and losers. So this makes the problem, if anything, harder to solve.
But that's where the winners and losers things
Introduced
come
another
from.
dimension of complexity into the
PJ
managing
Irvine.
the planet's climate problem.
World's most recognized geoengineer at an international geoengineering conference,
The losers
presenting
would be
his proposal to put 10 to 20 million tons of aluminum nanoparticles into the atmosphere annually. And on film, on the same footage, which is on the Dimming documentary, I confronted Dr. Keith at that presentation, at that conference, asking him, had any toxicological studies been done whatsoever
The
on
answer
these
is
particles?
none.
His
We've
first
all
response
seen
was,
this
well, we
thing.
studied
You
the
show
amount of
this as many
atmospheric
times as
aerosol,
you can.
particular loading, particulate the effects of a highly reactive metal like aluminum on toxifying soils and waters.
Alan Robots takes a stab at it, and then David says something about it too.
When they might affect high clouds. And for aluminum or other particles, there are a lot of toxicological things that need to get looked at seriously. But if you're just thinking about the sheer number of particles and the human health impact of small particles, the answer is, well, we haven't published it. That was the first thing we looked at with some of the leading experts about particle number density. So what we did is we said, we looked at some global estimates now we have of aerosol, global estimates that were built for epidemiological purposes of the global loading of aerosols in terms of health impacts. And we said if we added on top of that what we're doing from the stratospheric aerosols, could it have any impact? And the answer is that that was totally irrelevant. But that was just on particle number. We haven't done anything serious on alumina, and so there could be something.
I fully agree with this comment. Lifted Above says, Wigington's objective isn't to inform the public of the truth, but to use enough truth to draw the public into error. I fully agree with that statement. Man, I wish I could keep the chat up like right now. Just like bring you guys in here. I got you guys over here, but my God, it's the truth. That's how I feel about it. It's like there's enough truth there to draw you in, and then there's things like high bypass turbofans cannot create contrails, which is fundamentally flawed. It is utterly false. So you cannot have both. When you have somebody that has literally been repeating the same damn thing for years on end, that high bypass turbofans can't create clouds, and that it's all secret pipes and pumps because we have photos, you're literally tripping up the entire community. That's the whole point of this. That's the whole point of this. It's like I would not have a problem with Dane the individual if he told the whole story.
We haven't done anything serious on alumina, and so there could be something terrible that we'll find tomorrow. We haven't looked at it.
There's a
They
lot
banned me
that could go
from the
wrong.
subsequent conferences for asking that question.
Yeah, I mean, the ironic thing about Gates is that Gates has, and I've documented this in my book and in a bunch of articles, he has these huge, these vast investments in carbon industries, in the coal industry, in most of the big oil companies. He had when I was, when I last researched this, and I'm not sure it's still true, but I know there's no reason to believe that it isn't, but he owned manufacturing facilities for private airplanes or maintenance facilities for he had a private airplane company. He owns a big stake in the railroads, and I think about 20% of rail. And I could be wrong about this, but it's going to be close.
Real quick, hey Thor, I need you to come down here again. We need to get some trees cut down. So, like, I got some trees hanging over the house. I haven't seen Thor in chat in a long time, and I lost your phone number. So give me a call, dude. 803-450-4305. You got that? Thor's been to my house several times.
About 20% of railroad revenues, I think, come from carrying coal, and so he has a portfolio that is very, very heavily carbon. Of course, he flies private everywhere, and he's to Davos, as they all do. So he doesn't seem particularly concerned about global warming. And, I was in the environmental movement for 40 years. I didn't work directly on climate because I mainly focused on pollution issues, which are related because they're coming from the same factories, and for the same power plants and cement kilns, et cetera. But I was working for organizations like NRDC, which were very heavily involved in climate. And Gates never contributed to these organizations. He was not contributing to climate advocacy like maybe, some of the other, like Ted Turner. And
because Bill Gates owns a multi-million-dollar house right on the freaking beach. If he was so worried about climate change, if he thought global warming was real, he wouldn't buy a multi-million-dollar house on the beach. Nobody would. In fact, the bankers would not be writing checks to all these people and saying, oh yeah, here's a mortgage for a house on a beach. It's a 50-year mortgage, but we're pretty sure that in the next 50 years, the sea's going to rise and it's going to engulf the whole place. No, none of this makes any damn sense.
Bloomberg and the other people who talk about climate a lot, they were giving money to people who are advocating for, laws to end subsidies to the carbon industry and these kind of things. But Gates really was never involved in doing those things. So his involvement in, then he goes ahead and writes a book on climate this year, and he starts pretending that he's a big climate activist, but he's never been involved in climate activism. The only thing that he's been involved in is, as far as I know,
geoengineering,
funding these big geoengineering projects that seem just insane. And, my whole life I've been, a lot of what I do is fighting people who are trying to impose engineering solutions on environmental problems. God designed the planet to work pretty well. And
I've said it 1,000 times. Let God control the weather, not man. That's my whole shtick. So that's the best thing I've heard out of RFK this entire interview. God designed a pretty good climate, and it'll fix itself if we just stop screwing it up with pollution. But CO2 is not pollution. Metals are pollution. Metals kill things. Just saying.
And usually trying to fix it with an engineering solution, it's like whack-a-mole. It just causes more problems down the line. And if you're going to do a big, large-scale engineering solution, dams, dikes, lakes, etc., you better look at all of the unanticipated results of that. All they're thinking is, we have a problem. Here's an engineering solution. Don't ask me about any of the collateral damage from that solution. And that, it seems insane that somebody would sprinkle aluminum dust into the atmosphere, which we know is deadly toxic to the human brain.
We've been dealing a lot with some military activity in terms of chaff anyway, and that's something that I experienced for the first time yesterday. That was a whole lot of fun. And that's where the military just basically dumps some of the tiny particles of plastic or metal, mylar, into the atmosphere.
And when you see this kind of a pattern like this, you can rest assured there's something going on. They're actually little bitty magnetic and little bitty strips of, whether it's aluminum.
Then you see these bands of very distinct cloud cover moving into the region. That is not rain, that is not snow, believe it or not. Military aircraft flying through the region is dropping chaff. Small bits of aluminum, sometimes it's made of plastic or even metallicized paper products, but it's used as an anti-radar issue, and obviously they're up there practicing. Now, they won't confirm that, but I was in the Marine Corps for many years, and I'll tell you right now, that's what it is.
Exactly what the world's most recognized geoengineering doctor.
Okay, now he just talked about chaff. All right, now chaff, it's not the same, okay? And I'm gonna tell you why I know this. All right, I live in Sumter, South Carolina. I don't know if you guys can see that. Here, let me just bring this up. You see that? I took this photo because me and my family went hiking at Poinsett National State Park, which is, in Sumter County where I live. I live next to Shaw Air Force Base. This is the United States Air Force Poinsett Bomb Gunnery and Electronic Combat Range. All right. In the next photo, what does it say? Warning. U.S. government property, air-to-ground weapons range, no trespassing, because you'll effing die. And what does it say right after that? Do not enter Air Force Category 4 laser in use. For access, call this phone number and you can call to get permission to go on and do the thing. So yes, in my hometown, there is a bombing range next to Shaw Air Force Base by Poinsett State Park called the Poinsett Bombing Range. And whenever they fly down, plane comes in, and then it drops its bomb. And then as it's going up, it deploys chaff. And the chaff is supposed to throw off heat sensing anti-aircraft missiles. Or in the case of, they do also use lasers out there to simulate ground-based fire. It doesn't matter. The people that live downwind of the base are breathing all that crap on a daily basis. The bombs, the chaff, all of it happens all the time. I do not have a thyroid. My thyroid was removed. My wife's grandmother lived downwind of the bombing range. There's a video on my channel of a Apache AH-64 helicopter hovering in the front yard when we were staying with her grandmother. Her grandmother has Alzheimer's. The next door neighbor had Alzheimer's, and the next door neighbor to them all had Alzheimer's and died from it. All downwind of the bombing range. While I was in that house, my thyroid went from here to here. So it's a problem, but is it chemtrails? What the hell does it have to do with chemtrails at all? It is a serious military pollution problem. Same thing happened at Fort Jackson in Colombia. They're training the United States Army. They're throwing grenades every day. Guess what? The grenades that were going off, chemicals came from it, got into the groundwater, was poisoning people. Shaw Air Force Base, the chemicals that they use to put out fires, it's a foam. That foam, that chemical fire extinguisher was found in a trailer park about 2 miles away from the base in the aquifers. So the United States military is known for poisoning the shit out of everybody. It's known. Like Game of Thrones, it is known. But what does chaff have to do with geoengineering or watching geoengineering? It doesn't have anything to do with it. It's a pollution problem. What do I know about Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? It's the central hub for the United States Air Force Research Lab. It is where NASIC is, which is their intelligence wing that collects all the information and is a member of Weather Modification Weather Modification Incorporated, the United States Weather Modification Association. Excuse me. So Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Air Force Research Lab collects all the data from people doing cloud seeding experiments and all of that. And in the United States Navy, it's China Lake, California, United States Naval Warfare Station, China Lake. Has been since Operation Popeye in Vietnam, and is so today. Still the same. That's where your weather warriors are. That's where they always will be.
Dr. David Key said at this conference, the premise for him pushing aluminum as the element of choice is because it has a high albedo, high reflectivity, and low coagulation rate. And again, with no consideration of the consequences. We have lab tests from all over the globe, aluminum in all of them, in addition to barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers. The last 100 plus tests contained
aluminum, strontium, barium, and manganese. Aluminum, strontium, barium, they're all right there. SR, BA, AL, manganese. They're all there. I mean, this is not new news. You don't, I mean, anyway, moving on. Just move on.
Graphene. The tests contain surfactants, which we know from what we believe to be the primary material supplier, American Elements Institute. The surfactants are used to keep the nanoparticles from coagulating before they're
surfactants. Hold on, I'm gonna let him finish.
They're dispersed. Graphene. The tests contain surfactants, which we know from what we believe to be the primary material supplier, American Elements Institute. The surfactants are used to keep the nanoparticles from coagulating before they're dispersed. We see foaming rain everywhere. That's indicative of surfactants in the mix. We've tested frozen precipitation. It is packed with surfactants, which would be one reason why the snow is especially slippery now. In regard to the aluminum and the dispersions over the oceans.
Okay, he's moving on. So, surfactants. It is a jet fuel additive. This is also known. I wonder if I can find it on my script real quick. Because I have the original doc, which is freaking phenomenal. What do I gotta do? Log in? Sign in. Sign in with my email. ClimateViewer. All right, let's go. People are watching and waiting. Logging in. Where's my documents? Why they got to make this hard? Because I put a lot of stuff on here. There it is. What are the surfactants? What's surfactant? All right. So this is what's called Spec Aid 8Q462. Get out of my way. It's my damn document. So this particular additive is called Spec Aid 8Q462. Turbine fuel stabilizer and detergent or surfactant additive. This was designed as a HITS additive. Okay? Detergent, surfactant, soap, all same thing, right? Which is called a high thermal stability additive. It is to make it so that the planes can fly higher without their fuel freezing up, which actually makes their ice crystals smaller when they come out of the planes, which then obviously affects the residence time of the particulates, the aerosols that are coming out. But you can't find this anywhere anymore. This little jewel was sent to me by somebody. So a whistleblower sent me this. But yeah, it's that's your surfactant right there. That's one of them. I was actually looking for I'm not gonna read the whole thing. We could be here all damn night. But here, I'll throw this one in chat for you guys. Love you, mean it. Shebang. There's the actual additive. But it says right here in the middle, in the late 1980s, as a part of the U.S. Air Force Fuel Thermal Stability Improvement Project, an exhaustive search of more than 325 candidates was made to find an additive that could increase the thermal stability of jet fuel by as much as 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's why it's called a plus 100 additive. It is a plus 100 degree fuel heating additive. Spec 8 8Q462 is the only additive to meet the project's goals. It has now been in use in the United States Air Force and other foreign air forces for more than 20 years. Contact Tom Sanchez at the Aviation Fuels Business Leader right here at General Electric. They make the chemicals that go in the chemtrails. Moving along.
We believe that solar radiation management operations, stratospheric aerosol injection, and most of these operations are taking place in the troposphere, not the stratosphere. But we
explain that. How high is the troposphere? The stratosphere. Well, go ahead.
Depends entirely on location. Stratosphere in the polar regions can be as low as 23,000 feet, which means they can definitely spray in the stratosphere over the polar regions. Even some of the lower latitudes can be as low as 33,000 feet. So some of these operations are taking place in the stratosphere where the stratosphere is at lower elevations. But what we believe is also occurring over the oceans is a dual purpose.
And the troposphere is where? It's lower altitudes?
Are you kidding me that RFK doesn't know what the layers of the atmosphere are? Because I made this infographic because I know sometimes it's a little bit hard to understand exactly where the boundary lines are. But damn, I was really surprised to realize that RFK didn't even know where the troposphere was. So that was a bit of a shocker. And yes, it does vary, but I have it, right here on the left-hand side of this this infographic I made, the troposphere, and then the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the thermosphere. The mesosphere and the thermosphere all make up the ionosphere. The stratosphere is where the ozone layer is. So just giving you guys
generally
some
the
reference.
mid-latitudes would be high 30,000s in that range. And again, it depends on location on the planet. Depends on their atmospheric conditions can vary as well. But most aircraft fly in the upper troposphere, and that's where we're seeing dispersions. But we're seeing dispersions even at mid-latitudes as low as 20,000 feet. That's low. These particles don't stay aloft long. The lower the altitude, the larger the payload the aircraft can carry, and that may be one of their considerations. At lower altitudes, a KC-135 can carry 100 tons of material in a single payload. These are astoundingly high numbers of this particulate, and it would correlate to what we're seeing in the soil pH changes. And back to ocean iron fertilization, that's another proposal for geoengineering to fertilize the oceans, to force them to uptake more CO2. And we would argue this has already been occurring for decades, that the SRM, solar radiation management dispersions that are happening over our oceans, are also part of ocean iron fertilization. And that would correlate with studies we have, peer-reviewed studies of, for example, whales that are packed with alarming levels of aluminum. And as you stated, with all these organisms, aluminum toxic to virtually all life forms, no exception. And we see marine mammals like whales with peer-reviewed study that are packed full of aluminum. We have science study advocating for polymer-coated aluminum particles to be used in ocean iron fertilization. So again, there are so many puzzle pieces that connect. And clearly,
when you say the whales, because I've seen studies of beluga whales in the mouth of the St. Lawrence that are packed with aluminum. I mean, the highest aluminum levels ever found in living organisms in those whales. But that's because there's aluminum smelters, presumably, all along the St. Lawrence, those Canadian aluminum smelters that are operating on Canadian hydropower. Aluminum, as you know, to separate the aluminum from the bauxite, which is where geologically it occurs, you need tremendous heat, and it's very expensive to smelt. And so the places like
right now, Dane is like, son of a bitch, because he's like, look now, aluminum smelting. I know about this, but bruh, hold on. Yeah, there's aluminum but that's not the only one. Okay.
Like Greenland or Iceland rather, and Canada that have a lot of hydropower are very, very, are the location of choice for the aluminum smelters. You have cheap power. And so there's a lot of aluminum in the beluga whales there, but are you saying there's whales in the ocean that have high aluminum levels?
Yes, with peer-reviewed science study. There are no smelters in my region of Northern California. Lake Shasta is in my backyard, along with the Upper Sacramento River. I have been invited and included in closed-door meetings with Redding Environmental Health, that's the city furthest north in California, shown the lab tests for the massive spikes of aluminum in the rivers. This is the drinking water for California. Massive spikes in aluminum after every storm event. They didn't know where this metal was coming from. They've never disclosed these tests to date. So again, the level of cover-up here is beyond.
You can't say that CARB, said that there were massive spikes in aluminum, but they've never disclosed the tests. I mean, it's just, that's like fear porn 101. The proof is there's lots of aluminum showing up after every storm, but they've never published any of this stuff. No.
Uncomprehension. I've had private meetings in the Capitol with Governor Gavin Newsom, who knows this is going on, won't say anything. All the environmental groups you mentioned.
He talked to Gavin Newsom and he won't say anything. Gavin Newsom is a retread, okay? Let's be real. I mean, he has literally run California Stand into the ground. People are flocking the F out of California as we speak. Like right now, there, as we're making this video, there are 10,000 U-Hauls being shipped back to California to get refilled to get people the hell out of there. Gavin Newsom, there's a face you can trust.
All of them. WWF, Greenpeace, Sierra Club, Earth Justice, all of them.
RFK explodes. Alert. Watch this.
Our attorneys at geoengineeringwatch.org have spoken to their attorneys about this issue. They will not bring this issue up in any of their organizations because they don't want to lose their 501c3 nonprofit. We find that to be unimaginably hypocritical because the data to back this up is absolutely monumental.
I got to push back on that because I know these environmental leaders and I know their environmental groups, and nobody's worried about losing their 501c3 by taking a tough stand on an issue. There may be other reasons why they're not doing it. That would not be a reason.
The reason that they're not talking about it is because the way that you framed it, Dane, is so damn tinfoil hatty that nobody can take you seriously. Seriously. Like he literally just said to RFK that the Sierra Club, Friends of the Earth, and all of these groups, that they're scared they're going to lose their 501c3 nonprofit status if they speak up about geoengineering. But in order for them to actually speak up about geoengineering, damn it, Lori. I want somebody to marry Dom so Dom can come live with me. So you're going to have to move to South Carolina, not Montana. I mean, Montana's beautiful, but damn, Lori, email me, jim@climateviewer.com. We'll talk. You totally just threw me for a loop. If Dom would marry me and you'd put us up in Montana. Anyway, so yeah, Dane, of course, this is the way his brain works. He thinks, well, my lawyers say that, the Sierra Club and, all of these groups are scared to talk about geoengineering. Missouri. Thanks for that. Thanks up in Connecticut for pointing out that I got my acronyms wrong. MO is Missouri, not Montana. What was I thinking? God, I'm always wrong. And my chat will always call me on
it. They're not going to, they're not going to lose a 501c3 by criticizing the United States government. Nope. They can't do that to you. I think probably the reason they don't want to do it is that it's regarded as a crazy person's issue. It's regarded as I don't think of it that way. But it's easy, as you know, it's people, you take a lot of strength to do what you're doing. You're obviously very well informed. You've researched this stuff very well. I'm persuaded by what you're saying, but you must have had the experience of people dismissing this issue as something that just is too crazy to even contemplate. And I think the environmental groups are very wary to get involved. They feel they'll be marginalized if they get in. They only half believe it.
Yep.
They only half believe that it's happening.
I can only convey what our attorneys have told us that their attorneys told them. So again, if there's other reasons, and I can't.
So he just basically, like, even though RFK's like, look, dude, it's not because they're gonna lose their nonprofit status. He's like, I can only convey to you what our attorneys say that their attorneys told us, but maybe there's other reasons. So like he's unwilling to budge on any of his bullshit.
I don't know what their ultimate motivation is, but that's what we've been told. They won't even look at this issue. And I would ask this: how preposterous is it when we have the entire climate science community all over the globe describing exactly what we see in our skies as something we need to do immediately to deploy stratospheric aerosol injections, solar radiation management, jet aircraft spraying particles into the sky to block some of the sun's incoming thermal energy. And we have film footage of exactly this happening with literally whole horizons covered from what jet aircraft emit. This is
reminder earlier in the video, this shit has been happening since the 50s. Palm Springs, Air Force gives them two choices: live with the trails or move. So my fundamental problem with the terminology that Dane uses is spraying. It's the implication is none of this comes from jet fuel. None of this is actual pollution that creates clouds. It is intentional spraying, and that's what makes him a tinfoil hat, a limited hangout, a stooge. That's why he cannot be taken seriously. That's why he is mocked in peer-reviewed journals. He's studied like a effing lab rat of the chemtrail world because of the way he thinks and the things he says. Meanwhile, if somebody cites any one of my websites in the peer-reviewed journals, go to Google scholar.google.com and go to scholar.google.com and type in any one of my 3 websites. You're not going to see one negative comment about any of my stuff. In fact, my shit gets cited by the United Nations Environmental Program, Harvard, MIT, and all that. If you type Dane Wigington's name into scholar.google.com, there are literally, I think, at least 20 different journal entries on studying the maniac that is Dane Wigington.
Time-lapse fill footage. We have the exact elements named in multiple climate engineering patents. We have about 150 listed at geoengineeringwatch.org. Those same elements showing up in
the 150 patents at geoengineeringwatch.org came from my website. He stole them, he copy-pasted them, and I've been wanting to make good on this little problem for quite some time. So I went and I did this. And in the near future, let me actually bring up the original. Let me go to that. Bring that over here real quick, and we're here and here. And I'll show you this. I don't know how much I could blow this up, in fact, but this is a lot more patents, you could say. There we go. Lori, you so sweet. Lori with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Lori. So this is my most recent patent list. And as you can see, if I go all the way down here to the bottom, I've been working on this one. This is going to be on weather modification history in the future. He has my patent list from 2011 that I created on his website. He was bragging to Alex Jones that he created that patent list, which he did not. This is my new patent list, which I'll be putting up, which has over 2,057 patents. This is all of them worldwide. And on each of these, you can see, let me go back to the top. You can see title, assignee, priority date, filing creation date, publication date, grant date, link to the patent, and images. So I'll have the images from them as well. But don't believe me that this is legit. I can go like this. Let me see. Where's the other one at? The other one looked really neat. Anyway, I can just grab this, copy, come down here, and 11, come over here. We'll just go to this, then paste it in, enter, and bam. Intelligent systems for weather modification programs. And you can go through that. So that's coming in the future. That's why I'm constantly working on something in the background you guys never get to see. But I've been holding on to this one as a secret little surprise. And the last time this happened, when Dane stole my list, he wanted to go with, he had a lawyer threaten me, and I threatened him back, and we agreed to cease fire. But at the end of the day, it was copyright infringement. GoDaddy didn't agree with me because it was in just what they call a list, which isn't copyrightable. The next patent list will certainly be copyrighted, and you won't be able to steal this one, Dana.
Absolutely alarming quantities on the ground. We have a condition now called global dimming, which is the amount of direct sunlight no longer reaching the surface of the planet that's staggeringly high. We have also global stilling, another science term, which means the overall wind flow around the planet is being diminished.
This is true. That although global dimming isn't so true, in fact, the sky's getting whiter and brighter. Wind is slowing down, and a lot of that is due to aerosol loading, things like that.
We have a radical reduction in overall precipitation around the globe. Yes, we have deluge in many places, but overall we have much more protracted drought. The laws of physics state that can't happen on a rapidly warming planet because the atmosphere holds 7% more moisture for every degree C of warming. We believe from frontline temperatures that we are past 3.5 degrees C right now, not 1.5, 3.5.
He believes that we are 3.5 degrees Celsius of global warming. I mean, I throw my hands up right there. Like, that's where I draw the line. Like, first of all, nobody can prove that. Second of all the numbers are cooked. Just like other numbers that I'm not going to say it. We're going to get this video banned. But they fake numbers. And here's Dane saying, I believe that we're at like 3.5 degrees Celsius of global warming already. That is possibly the dumbest shit that has ever come out of his mouth.
On a rapidly warming planet, because the atmosphere holds 7% more moisture for every degree C of warming, we believe from frontline temperatures that we are past 3.5 degrees C right now, not 1.5, 3.5. And so how can we have that reduction in the hydrological cycle, that level of global dimming, the reduction of wind flow, which would be related to a interference with convection on the planet? All of those dots connect to what we know climate engineering consequences to be. And there's one more big one that's very alarming. We are seeing extraordinarily high levels of UVC on the surface, not just extreme levels of UVB. We are detecting UVC. We have a former NASA contract engineer that works directly for Geoengineering.org with equipment we supplied him, state-of-the-art equipment. And we are told UVC stops 100,000 feet up in the atmosphere. Peer-reviewed study 6 months ago from a group of scientists acknowledged the UVC on the surface, and they were attacked immediately. And that study was swept under the rug. We're seeing other evidence of that. We're seeing bark scorch on the Cambrian layer of trees from tip to trunk. We're seeing plankton population decline off the scale. And we know plankton feed in the upper layers of the water column, so the UVC would certainly wreak.
The phytoplankton thing has nothing to do with UVC. Like, he gets his shit wrong on so many things. Yes, UVC is penetrating lower. It has more to do with what Chuck Long said, that commercial aviation is creating a subvisual ice age, which is changing diffuse light radiation. And that, in combination with changes to the ozone layer, is why we're seeing more UVC at the ground. This has nothing to do with the phytoplankton decline, which the phytoplankton decline is related to something called the claw process. And I've discussed this. You can see it on my YouTube channel, destroying the water cycle. The actual reasons why, not this. Just
havoc with their populations. Recent peer-reviewed study shows in the Atlantic a 90% decline in plankton. Peer-reviewed study. We see the evidence of everything we would expect with climate engineering, including the elements on the ground. And yet we're told that this is some sort of fringe issue when every single government in the globe is discussing it, every single climate scientist is discussing it, and we have a history of weather modification going back 75 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'll push back on the hydrological cycle because what the most of the modeling suggests that
hey, now, here he is again. When RFK says I'll push back, he what he means is I'm gonna call bullshit on this. That's the gentleman's way of saying I don't agree with you. Bullshit. Let me give my alternative perspective on what you believe, just so we're all clear.
I've been reading for 40 years is that you're going to get a lot more rainfall in coastal regions, but because of the heat, the excess heat in the in interiors of the continents, it's going to get much drier. So that, I mean, that that obviously, if you've got a hotter atmosphere, you're going to have more.
Lori, thank you so much. Up in CT, thank you so much. Guys, I appreciate the super chats. You don't know how much it matters right now. I mean, seriously. You guys just super chatted more than I'm going to get in AdSense for the whole damn month. That's the truth. Thank you so much.
More precipitation, and the question is, where does that precipitation ring out of the clouds? Does it do it in the between the coast and the coastal ranges, or does it make it into the interior of the country? But all of the issues that you're talking about make sense.
I think we do agree on the drought situation. We're not saying that with a rapidly warming planet you wouldn't have these droughts.
Sorry, I gotta read this comment, dude. This is killing me right now. Bruh, lifted above, you just about damn near killed me. The butterflies are farting in the Amazon. It's increasing methane levels. It's gonna destroy the moon. We got to form a bureaucracy and address this as soon as possible. Oh, shit. Problem solution. See me with a 1999 super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. But damn, lifted above, you got me tickled just now.
Drought-prone areas.
Gary C with the $4.99 super chat. Thank you so much. God bless you guys. Thank you.
In interior regions. What we're speaking about is overall precipitation, and overall global precipitation is down, not up. And again, laws of physics make clear 7% more moisture for every degree C of warming. And we know with the time.
Okay, so this brings me back to another person we were talking about earlier, and the link is right here. And we were talking about, who's in charge of all this crap. So we're going to flip this over to here. In fact, we're going to get me out of the way. I'm going to go over here. And on this little infographic, you can see these names. Ben Kravitz right here. Yeah. What just happened? Oh, it's the delay. It's the delay. Mapping the landscape of climate engineering. This is where I got this from. Reject your cookies. I like cookies, but not your cookies. This is where I got it from. Mapping the landscape of climate engineering. This was back in 2014, so it's a bit old. They need to update this, obviously. But let's see. Supplemental materials. You know what? I'm not even gonna do this way. We're just going to put the damn image because that's what I meant to open in a new tab. So over here, you can see these are the people funding geoengineering. Okay. Vicky Sicardo, $2 super chat. Thank you so much. God bless you. I appreciate it. Over here on one side, you've got who's paying for the research. Okay. And you can't see it because of me. National Science Foundation USA, #1 funder of geoengineering. European Commission, NASA, DECC, DEFRA in the UK, EPSRC and NERC in the UK, the UK Royal Society. But then right here you see Fund for Innovative Climate and Energy Research, FICER. That is Bill Gates' money. You also see Department of Energy, NCAR, I've interviewed them, and other people from around the world. So Academy of Finland, Royals, I've covered that. But the reason I bring this up is because over here, Thor at the door drops a 50 bomb. Appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you, Thor. It's been quite a while since we've seen each other, and I do hope you come down here because I don't know who else to call about my tree issue. So come down here and I'll give you your $50 back if you help me deal with these trees. Damn, bro. Love you, mean it. So Ken Caldera, these are the authors. These are the guys writing the science behind geoengineering. And you'll see Ken Caldera is the biggest, Alan Robach, but number 3 is Ben Kravitz. I mentioned the winners and losers. There's Peter J. Irvine right there. Okay, that's the winners and losers guy that we talked about earlier in the video. Ben Kravitz, though, this name, you should know it because Ben Kravitz is the lead author of papers about what would happen to the water cycle, to the hydrological cycle, if geoengineering occurred on a worldwide basis. So, what does Ben Kravitz say about that? That's really the question. And what he's shown is that much like with real life volcanoes, that the southern hemisphere tends to get drier and the northern hemisphere tends to get wetter. This is what a natural analog to what happens with volcanoes when they erupt. So typically, everything south of the equator gets drier, more dead brown people, more wet white people, northern hemisphere. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. So anyway, look up Ben Kravitz if you want to. Go scholar.google.com. Ben Kravitz, geoengineering. You're going to see something called the GeoMIP, GeoMIP, which is the Geoengineering Model Intercomparison Project, where they take all the different geoengineering models of what the future geoengineered world would look like and all the different projections of what it would do to rainfall pattern. Neither one of these two have a clue what that would be.
Type of ocean fertilization programs that we believe are being conducted. If there's polymer fibers in that, and there's been polymer fibers in our precipitation testing here, that would certainly inhibit evaporation over the oceans. The blocking of direct sunlight absolutely inhibits evaporation.
Is the polymer fiber, is that another particulate that they use to block the energy of the sun?
It's in the patents, yes, and even mentioned in David Key's.
In the patents, what does he got there? Why is this so big? 6315. Let me see that real quick. I'll look that one up real quick. All right. F. 6315 213. There it is. Method for modifying weather. Boop, 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 boop. And give me that. And we'll go look at that patent real quick. Do, 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 do. Oh, that's air quality monitoring. What am I got? I had that up earlier. I was going to do something totally unrelated, but we're not going to do that now. Method of modifying weather with some gel. Forming an aqueous solidifier material capable of retaining over 300 times its own weight in water. This was invented by Geltech Solutions, Inc. Fire protection equipment. Okay. Geltech Solutions. Fire ice. Has anybody ever seen this stuff? Look at them chemtrails putting out them fires. Yeah. Nothing about weather control on here. A lot about fighting wildfires. But anyway, going back to the video.
Even mentioned in David Key's presentation, the polymer fibers being used as a means to keep the particles aloft longer, just like a spider web does for those types of spiders that migrate in the atmosphere. That is the thinking behind the use of polymer fibers.
Dane, let me ask you one thing. Who owns the patents? Are they big, like military contractors, or?
U.S. government owns many of the primary ones. The patent holder is signed to U.S. government. Raytheon holds many. Lockheed Martin holds many. And by the way,
this is a lie.
Tie those two private defense contractors into this scenario. We know that Lockheed Martin and Raytheon do.
Kathleen McKinnon with a $100 super chat. God bless you. You guys are gonna make me blush now. I swear I'm not showing my feet. I'm not showing my feet. I'm gonna save that for my my OnlyFans one day. But seriously, Kathleen, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All the weather modeling for the nation's weathermen that have
this part's actually important.
Particulate that they use to block the energy of the sun.
It's in the patents. Yes, and even mentioned in David Key's presentation, the polymer fibers being used as a means to keep the particles aloft longer, just like a spider web does for those types of spiders that migrate in the atmosphere. That is the thinking behind the use of polymer fibers.
Dane, let me ask you one thing. Who owns the patents? Are they big, like military contractors, or?
U.S. government owns many of the primary ones. The patent holder is signed to U.S. government. Raytheon holds many. Lockheed Martin holds many. And
okay, that's utterly bullshit. It's just utterly bullshit to say that the U.S. government, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon own the majority of the patents that are out there. And that's the only reason I'm even showing you this, because I was going to keep this all a secret till later on. But you can go through this list and you can look. And what we're going to see is who it's assigned to and who actually created it. And I can search this entire document. Like right now, I could type in Boeing, like the Boeing Air Company. And guess what I get? The Boeing Company. Right here. This is a system and method for inducing rainfall by Boeing Company. Can you guys see that? Oh, let me flip this around. The Boeing Company, okay? Donald Wilkins. He's the one who wrote it. It's assigned to Boeing, right? We all get that? Right below it is Ken Caldera. Water alteration structure and risk management for ecological alteration management systems and methods. This is Ken Caldera and Bill Gates on a patent to steer hurricanes. I covered this in that thing that I showed you earlier where I was talking about the Department of Homeland Security and Bill Gates and all of them and how they were involved with geoengineers to steer hurricanes. So yeah, right there you see Ken Caldera and Bill Gates in the same patent. But you can search all through this, and what you don't hear is Raytheon. Not in there. Lockheed Martin. Lockheed. Not in there. This is all period ALL of the weather modification patents, okay? Now, it is true that Raytheon had some HARP-related patents at one time, but they're not assigned to Raytheon any longer. The other one is InQtel. InQtel runs the Tromso ionospheric heater, but InQtel is actually a CIA shell company. It is a CIA company, InQtel, and they run the ionospheric heater in Tromso. You can't make this up. So it is true that Raytheon and InQtel have some space weather modification patents, but they have zero weather modification patents. Now, the next part, he actually gets somewhat correct.
By the way, to tie those two private defense contractors into this scenario, we know that Lockheed Martin and Raytheon do all the weather modeling for the nation's weathermen that have the federal gag order on them. Lockheed Martin are neck deep in climate engineering patents and climate engineering operations. So we have the Foxes literally running the hen house for the, quote, scheduled weather. And that's how, even down to the local meteorologist level, we have them predicting a, quote, mostly sunny day a week in advance here, for example, in Northern California. And on that day, there's not a natural cloud in the sky. There's only sprayed aerosol dispersions. How did that meteorologist know 7 days in advance that that was going to occur? So
two things. I'm going to call bullshit on that because I watch my weather forecast 1 week out from 17 different sources, okay? And they're never right. They're never, ever right. And in fact, no weather forecaster worth his salt would ever predict cloud cover. They'll give it to you in percentage chances. Any one of you know this. I mean, come on, this is common knowledge. Like, I cannot believe that he's even stating this out loud. But where he's right is that it does get filtered through Raytheon software. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come to ClimateViewer.com. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to click on AMS 2018, which is when I went to the 21st conference on plan and inadvertent weather modification. Okay, so I flew to Austin, Texas to interview the people who control the weather, like Daniel Rosenfeld from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, William R. Cotton, who was part of Project Storm Fury steering hurricanes, and a whole lot of other stuff. And then if you come to this one in particular, like I said, I talked to UCAR, that's the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research. I interviewed the U.S. Naval Research Lab about HARP. Nikki Florio from BeHeroic.com, another activist friend of mine, and Dr. Jim Fleming, who wrote this book right here, which is right behind me, Fixing the Sky, The Checkered History of Weather Modification by James Roger Fleming. I interviewed him there. So this is the important part about what Dane actually said there, because I got firsthand confirmation of this, as you will see here. So firsthand, this has some beautiful graphics. Oh, Lord. All right. So first off, I'm hanging out with these guys.
And I use technology to do that. We actually use something called Cesium, if you're familiar with it, 3D Globe.
It's on
open source.
Cesium. He's like, Cesium? Yeah, that's what we got on the screen behind you. They're using augmented reality. Anyway.
It's at climateviewer.org. It's a map. So I take mapping data and I make it fun for people and make it a video game kind of thing.
That's awesome. So we have two different things that I think we would love to show you. Sure. One is Sensor, which is directly behind you, and Brooks and Mark and Jay.
So Sensor is the idea that they're going to take all of the Doppler radars and make them into radars like HARP. They're going to be basically phased array antennas. But that's not the important part. I mean, I could show you this whole video. You guys can check it out in chat here. I'll give you a link to it. This is the Raytheon video. This is the proof that all of your weather belong to Raytheon. Because at UCAR, the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research, they have something called AWIPS, and it basically takes all the different weather sources of the governments, the private industry, and it puts them all into one package. AWIPS is open source, okay? So because it's open source and it's made by UCAR and NCAR, which is in Boulder, Colorado, Raytheon then took that program and turned it into what was called AWIPS 2. And all of the weather data that is used by NOAA, the National Storm Prediction Center, your local meteorologist, flows through Raytheon's software. And
visualize
anyway,
anything other than what's on the screen.
I'll show it to you right here because the guy admits it in an interview.
Oh, it's a VR. This one,
Sure.
Brooks?
And what it's related to is drought. So the next question is, what do you do about drought? Well, they do weather modification upstairs. So what the similarity I found in my map was that the
Raytheon, that's essentially both the software and the hardware. Essentially both the software and the hardware.
Nice to meet you.
This is
I want your beard.
So this is Jeff Munkle from Raytheon admitting that all of this does flow through their software.
Oh.
Seriously.
So I'll talk to you guys briefly about AWIPS, the Advanced Weather Interactive Process.
Advanced Weather Interactive Processing System 2, AWIPS.
System. This was designed by Raytheon. That's essentially both the software and the hardware network that the National Weather Service uses for visualizing, interrogating data, and also disseminating and issuing.
That the National Weather Service uses.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So this is all touchscreen.
Yes.
And Space Launch Florida.
That stuff really has nothing to do with AWIPS.
I don't care. Oh, that's fun.
Yep.
All right, so this is a content delivery network and a visualization tool all in one.
Yep. So this is
Jeff is like, don't touch my screen.
To view all types of data. They can be model data, radar data, satellite observations, model ensembles, and then it also allows them to manipulate grids and then send that grid of data over the SBN to public and to external users, such as Weather Channel or anything like that.
So this is a product. Who specifically uses this right now? Weather.com? Anybody?
The National Weather Service.
National Weather Service.
Yep, uses AWIPS 2 for their official forecasts.
Okay.
So the National Weather Service and weather.gov uses Raytheon software to collect all this stuff. Straight from Raytheon's Jeff Munkle to you. Because I interviewed him.
So again, we know that they're doing the weather modeling for National Weather Service and NOAA. In fact, that has to be because they.
And we know this because Jim went and interviewed him. Say it, Dane.
Need to control the narrative, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Okay, two questions. One is, you say that all of the weathermen. Are you talking about the television weathermen are under a gag order? Because this seems crazy.
No. National Weather Service and National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Okay, so they're under a gag order. Do we know what the gag order says?
It's a general gag order. It was sent to us in the mail in an unmarked envelope when it was first issued. But it's a general gag order that restricts them from discussing any of the organization's conduct or operations. It restricts them from discussing anything about the organization's operations. And as far as getting down to a local meteorologist level, certainly that's a matter of protecting paychecks and pensions. They know how long their leash is.
But there's no reason a local TV weatherman would know anything about this anyway. I mean, I don't think they need to be read into the program because they aren't part of it. They wouldn't know. But again, I want to go back to this other issue that I talked to you about that I really didn't I still don't know, but is it your theory that a lot of this is happening from the commercial aircraft that we ride on? You know, if I have to go to New York or something, is it possible that that airline for American Airlines is spraying this stuff and the pilot doesn't know about it?
Two potential scenarios there. I'll answer that in a moment. I just want to back up to local meteorologists. We're not at all implying that they're part of it being included in any of these operations as far as in the know. We're simply stating that they certainly know they're reading scripts. They are definitely reading scripts. They put out the same narrative. We see them change that narrative at the same time as the weather bounces all over the board because these programs do exactly.
That's true of all news. I mean, all mainstream media news is all people repeating stuff.
Exactly what you described earlier, weather whack-a-mole. So we're not implying with them or the commercial pilots and personnel, they're not involved, but certainly they know. We're communicating with some commercial pilots and personnel. So just trying to separate that out. On the rest of two scenarios, as I stated a moment ago, we know that the US DoD is leasing no less than 400 commercial aircraft with commercial markings. Why would they need 400 commercial aircraft with commercial markings? Next.
There's actually a program where they secretly fly people to bases. I covered it in a previous video, but there's a lot more. There's a lot of reasons why the military has unmarked planes, and it ain't just geoengineering. But I did track those planes down, and that is a real thing.
Again, as far as what commercial pilots know, and we're communicating with them, so we know that they know, but they're not saying anything about this. We have a much smaller payload carried with a commercial aircraft. It may be as low as 5% as a military tanker fully loaded, but we know that they're dispersing because we have up-close images of them doing so, turning on and off. And you don't hit that kind of vertical layering in the atmosphere. It's layered horizontally, so you're not going to have a trail that cuts off like it was cut with a knife. That's not possible atmospherically. So,
no, but it's possible with an electronic control unit and a thrust. It's called your thruster. But anyway,
again, yes, commercial aircraft are being used. We can't know if the particular aircraft with the particular commercial markings is necessarily carrying passengers or not. But the U.S. military leasing many of those aircraft. Next, the U.S. military.
You can see all of this on ADSB Exchange. Look it up. I dropped a link in chat. If you want to find it yourself and you're having trouble, you can go to ClimateViewer.org. And when you're there, just click on Earth Monitor. It's right here. You can either find it here or you can find it from up here at the top. Just click Earth Monitor. When you click Earth Monitor, it's going to pop up, and then all of my links for tracking everything, including ship tracking, so you can find the ship that's making the ship track, or ADSB exchanges right here for flight tracking. All that is available on climateviewer.org/3D. So you can track the military planes. You can find out if it is a military plane or if it's an unmarked. Like any one of these, you can click on them. It's going to show you a picture of it, what the tail markings are, who it's, this is United Airlines. I mean, they're all right there. That's from the Philippines. And it'll tell you what they are and if it is a military plane or not. And I find like many military planes all the time. But, if I started to hunt for one right now, that might be a little bit tougher. But yeah, you can know, and knowing is half the battle.
Tanker fleet. We have the U.S. military owns and controls 3 times more aerial tankers than all other militaries in the world combined. And if I can add one more historical fact into this that I think would have relevance for everybody given global events, we have, for example, after 9/11, we had General Wesley Clark stating on the record that the Middle Eastern countries that were to be targeted, a list that we believe existed before 9/11 even occurred. But my point is this, that those Middle Eastern countries, every single one subsequently underwent a once in 1,000-year drought. That's mathematically, statistically impossible to have that kind of coincidence unless there was something else in the equation. That's something else we would argue is climate engineering. And to back that up, we have leaders of some of those countries, in the case of Iran, on the floor of the United Nations stating emphatically that NATO was cutting off their precipitation, destabilizing food production, thus destabilizing populations. We know that Iran's a target.
The Ahmadinejad thing is old. If you actually want to get something a little more recent, Dane, you can go to the end of this timeline for starters. And right here, Iran accuses Israel of cloud theft 2018. So yes, that is a thing. Joint teams from Israel and one of the neighboring countries make the clouds entering Iran barren. This is the exact same thing that the CIA did to Cuba back in the 1960s, except it's happening today. Moreover, we are faced with cases of cloud theft and snow theft. Brigadier General Gholam Reza Jalali, head of Iran's civil defense organization, said. So yeah, and all the references you need for that on the page. Cloud theft. And I just clicked shit. This is true.
Target of NATO. It has been for a very long time. Next, if we look at the satellite imagery off of the California coast, for example, we can see these operations occurring. We're not guessing.
Those are ship tracks right there. That's the ship tracks, guys. Play that beautiful bean footage again.
We can see these operations occurring. We're not guessing or speculating. We can see them completely breaking up the storm track. And I would encourage you listeners to view.
But he does not believe that ship tracks are real. He does not believe bunker fuel is real. He will tell. He has made a video, and there's an article to go with it, that says these are clearly not caused by ships. They're caused by planes spraying. And that's why the dude just cannot be reasoned with. I mean, I don't understand it. It just doesn't make any damn sense at all.
Presentations that I did almost a decade ago, engineered drought catastrophe, target California. Every single thing I said would happen here has happened. Not because I was looking into a crystal ball, but because I was looking at data. And if these programs continued, it had to happen, and it did.
Yeah, I'll tell you one of the reasons that I kind of hate this.
I'll see if I can find it.
My mind is open to this. Is because Woody Harrelson one time was at my house and he was talking about this. This was probably 10 years ago. And I was saying, come on, that's ridiculous. That's impossible. And he said, come outside with me. And we went outside and we sat on a hillside and we watched these planes fly in a grid pattern, laying out this, a grid of contrails. And then it turned into clouds and we had a cloudy day. And I don't know, I've looked up many times since then and seen that happening. And I don't have a good explanation for it. But, the things that you're saying are consistent, are internally consistent, and they're consistent with things that I've observed. It's amazing to think that they can keep it that secret that well for this long. But
all right, to address this, for a fact that I'm not full of shit, and you guys might have thought I was making this up, I remember this from 2017. And that's only because, I had been talking about ship tracks for a long time. And then Mike Morales from Above Ground World News, our dearly departed friend, he was talking about it too. And Mike, God bless him, made over 100,000 subscribers. So I don't know how he did it other than showing up all the time. Now I know, I'll admit that I have not been the best at showing up all the time. But Mike hammered this point home. So at some point, Dane had to address it. And what did he do? He said, climate engineer, stupid ass website is not even designed for mobile friendliness. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hack this real quick and we're going to get rid of this whole damn column. Content, margin left. Oh, hidden width 40. No, we're going to put that back. We're going to say width 0. And that absolutely destroys the website. So it's probably hidden all the way down here now. No, that doesn't work. I'll put that back to 460. What the hell does he have going on here? Dude, you do not know how to code a website. Who did this? Who did this? Oh, it's got a margin left on it. That's why. All right, now I can blow it up. Good Lord. Bad website programming 101. All right. So now that we can actually zoom in on this and read it, climate engineering cover it, ship tracks and jet spraying, May 31, 2017. NASA tells us shockingly visible and extensive. Am I cutting this off? Yeah, it's not responsive. Stupid ass website. Let me go back to this. With, let's say 100%. Oh. Main with no padding. Why, dude? Like, literally why? Anyway, or just get over it. I can't fix your broken ass website live on the internet, but I've done the best I can. NASA tells us all shockingly visible and extensive tracks or trails being witnessed on satellite imagery over oceans like the one shown below are all the result of pollution being produced by ships, which in turn are creating clouds. That is exactly what they're doing. They're called ship tracks. It is rational to fully accept the ship tracks explanation from NASA as the only source of trails. Is it rational to think that the ship tracks explanation from NASA is the only source of trails we so clearly see in the following image? NASA, of course, does not in any way acknowledge the ongoing geoengineering, solar radiation management, jet aircraft dispersions. We must consider and remember that any method of delivering toxic particles into the atmosphere, ship dispersions or jet aircraft dispersions, are forms of climate engineering intervention which are inflicting immense damage to overall life support systems of the planet. Picture of ship tracks. In reality, NASA is nothing more than a military-industrial complex contractor for the power structure. Deceiving the public has always been part of the agency's mission. Let's consider NASA's official position on geoengineering or chemtrails. The blah, 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 blah. That if the design characteristics of modern high-bypass turbofan jet engines are taken into account, NASA's official just contrails narrative can be seen for what it is: total deception. Below is a satellite loop animation of some ship tracks. NASA tells us these are all just ship tracks from ship engine combustion exhaust created by standard commercial shipping vessels. But is this official explanation reasonable in all cases? First, the extreme volume of shipping traffic operations in the Eastern Pacific. Why would only a select percentage of ships leave such a blatantly large visible tracks? Next, why would we... anyway, so he keeps going on and he tries to make this point that none of this is possible. You know, that this is not from ships. It is from planes. It's simply from planes spraying. None of this is actually ship tracks. I cannot freaking believe this one. So anyway, you can read the article yourself. Climate engineering cover up, ship tracks, and jet spraying. The guy doesn't believe it's real. I mean, I understand. You know, he's a different kind of fellow. So that's that.
You know, I've seen them do that with other things as well.
We have to stand back and understand, given the severity of biosphere collapse and based on the statistical mathematical trajectory, if we continue on this course, none of us are going to be here that much longer. We have global wildlife populations crashing right now, that we've lost 70% of global wildlife populations in the last 40 years. Some sites citing 50.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other reasons that's happening too.
Certainly.
RFK's got to call bullshit again. I mean, even Robert Kennedy is literally going, dude, you're making these broad brush statements that all biological material on the planet is dying because of climate engineering. And that's just on its face bullshit.
I'm not blaming. I'm not. No. I'm not.
I mean, the thing that to me.
No, RFK, don't turn on me now. Don't turn on me, please.
That is really kind of, you know,
us are going to be here that much longer. We have global wildlife populations crashing right now, that we've lost 70% of global wildlife populations in the last 40 years. Some sites citing 50.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other reasons that's happening too.
Certainly. I'm not blaming. I'm not. No. I'm not.
I mean, the thing that to me that is really kind of, you know, I'm not going to say dispositive, but really hard to explain, is that I've seen all of this data, you know, that about the aluminum concentrations dramatically.
Everybody say hi to Geoengineering Free Canada in chat. Good people. Hi, Bettina. Gotta be you. I spoke at a couple of her events.
Increasing in national forest lands and other places that are completely remote from any smelter. And as you say, aluminum, unlike mercury, precipitates out of the atmosphere within 100 to 200 miles from a smelter. Oh, if you're on the West Coast and the nearest smelter is in, upwind smelter is in Japan or China, the aluminum, there's no explanation for all that aluminum, those aluminum concentrations in national forests on the West Coast. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. If I could just back up for the record, I definitely did not mean to imply in any way that what's happening could be blamed entirely on climate engineering. Not at all. We've been unimaginably poor stewards of the planet. I mean, where would we start? I lectured on global warming before I focused all on climate engineering. So,
I lectured on global warming before I started on climate engineering.
Yeah, we're poisoning the oceans. We're cutting down our forests. We're paving the planet, dumping nuclear waste everywhere. So I certainly recognize all of that.
Good. You should talk about it more because it's more important than what you're talking about. Because if we don't deal with the deforestation and the pollution and actual problems with the planet, then these CO2 climate cultists are going to continue to be able to push the narrative that everybody's going to die, and we're going to end up with geoengineering, the legal kind, like the David Keith kind, the Bill Gates kind, the Ken Caldera kind.
I'm just simply stating as an aggregate that given the severity of our situation, given the severity of climate collapse, why would we think that governments around the globe wouldn't deploy this in a last-ditch effort to keep business as usual until the last possible moment? And I would argue that's exactly what they're doing. And even if I could, before I forget to include this, a key part of climate engineering is engineering winter weather events. And that's key right now because we have Winter Storm Elliott being manipulated in the US. In regard to the validity of that manipulation, the climate engineers being able to seed endothermic reacting elements, energy absorbing elements into clouds to create a cold dense layer that descends to the surface and create frozen precipitation out of what would have been liquid precipitation. I would cite, if your listeners search Chinese scientists create artificial snowstorm. They'll find Popular Science covered it, Fox News, MSNBC, and everybody else. They did $2 billion worth of damage to Beijing by nucleating clouds into frozen precipitation. They stopped talking about it after that. We have the patents for this. We've tested the frozen precipitation. And again, we have snow falling in places at 40 degrees. How does that
just so we're clear,
happen? We have patents that based on elements like ammonium, barium, urea, stating that those patents can nucleate cloud moisture at temperatures 40 and 45 degrees. All of these dots connect when they do this, and they create a flash cold event. It serves the carbon industry very, very well because they can come up with lots of new records or cold temperatures. It skews public perception as to the true state of the warming on the planet. It confuses them, divides them, and again, creates a lot of low temperatures that skew the global data for the year, which keeps us from having record high months and years when we otherwise would have. So there are so many complexities here around climate engineering that serve those in power to keep business as usual until the last possible moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the other parts of your story that, is important to understand is the military programs to weaponize climate, because of course they're doing that. Of course, I know they're doing that because they do it with everything else. They do it with chemicals, they do it with biology. Anything that they can weaponize, they're going to. And what you just said about Iran, if you're involving civilians in that program, in a program that is attached to the weaponization of climate, the weaponization of weather, you can maybe force them to sign state secrecy contracts and everything else to make sure that, and of course, if you violate a state secret, there's 4.3 million Americans who, according to Kevin Shipp, who was running that program for the CIA, who have signed state secrecy agreements. So if you're involved with the civilian application of these geoengineering projects, and if they're being run by the Department of Defense, and they come to you and say, or the intelligence agencies, and they say, we want you to be part of this, but you need to sign a state secrecy agreement, then you're never going to talk about it, because then you go to jail for 20 years and you lose every possession you have. And you don't get a lawyer either. So anyway, I think that's an aspect that makes the secrecy explainable. The fact that they are probably militarizing this and weaponizing it to attack other countries, to hurt other countries, crop production, etc.
I would fully agree. And Kevin's an exceptional human being. I know Kevin, he's a personal friend as well. And he's certainly spoken on this issue in the film, The Dimming. And this plugs into one of your earlier questions too, Robert. Those that have stepped forward that are retired. In our groundbreaking documentary, The Dimming, there are 2 U.S. Air Force generals, a brigadier general and a 2-star general, both acknowledging this issue on film, on the record. Former Canadian Minister of Defense acknowledging this issue on the record. Former Premier for British Columbia, the same.
I went to the government in Ottawa under Freedom of Information. There was a 40-page report, of which half the pages were completely blank, and the other half had a lot of blank outs. But there was sufficient information to tell me that, yeah, they're aware. They call it geoengineering.
We have former Forest Service scientists, former Fish and Game scientists, all in that film acknowledging this issue on the record.
None of which have the single iota of evidence. I mean, like I've watched The Dimming. We've been 2 hours and 58 minutes. Holy shit, this is a new record. 3 hours to watch a 59-minute video. So God forbid, that's why I said I wouldn't do The Dimming, because it would literally take episodes for me to go through the loads of BS and the manipulative tactics and the claims by supposed credible sources that really don't know any more about this topic than you or anybody else. I mean, they don't have any evidence whatsoever. And trust me, like if it was there, it's already on weathermodificationhistory.com. So if there was evidence, I would have it already. That's my point. It does not exist. So you have to work with what you can prove in a court of law, what you can act on, and not hope that I can prove that Operation Large Area Coverage, which happened back in the 50s, the zinc cadmium sulfide dispersions, they did not disclose that as truth until 70 years later. 65. Let's say 65. 65 years later, they admitted that they sprayed zinc cadmium sulfide all over America because a group of St. Louis people came forward and somebody did a report called the Manhattan-Rochester Coalition, which led to the U.S. Army Chemical Corps finally admitting to this shit. So if you're willing to wait around till you're on your deathbed to finally hear that the CIA, and it will be them, in cohort with one of our military branches, if not more, was doing rogue geoengineering, then you better go ahead and act on what you can prove. And what you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt is that chemicals and jet fuel make clouds. Clouds bad. Clouds change weather. Clouds trap heat, not CO2. If you care about this planet and you care about your children, you'll act on what you know.
So there are some courageous individuals out there, and we simply are trying to get others to step forward. And I've been in the field with USDA scientists that I know testing forest floor pHs, and we have the baseline values, by the way. I want to make that clear. I have the original USDA baseline values in my possession, so we know how much they've escalated. But I've had these USDA scientists in the field looking at me very sheepishly. They know this is going on and saying, what do you want us to do about it? They don't want to jeopardize their employment, and they're not saying a thing.
All right. Well, give me some advice here. If you know, for people who are listening to this podcast and they have questions and really want to figure out whether this is going on, where can they see this happening? Where can what should they look for in their own lives and their own, as they would sort of walk around, what kind of signs of this should they look for? And then I'm going to ask you, if people have questions about this, where should they go to get good information?
First, about science, and there's a few major issues that we don't even see the agricultural industry acknowledging. One, we know bioavailable aluminum is toxic to root systems. We have peer-reviewed science study to confirm that. So it not only kills soil microbiome, but root systems, for example, in trees and forests, sense the toxin, they shut down nutrient uptake, they start to die a slow, protracted death, and we have the so-called experts in governmental agencies telling us it's just the beetles. Beetles are simply a symptom of a tree that's sick and dying. And we have aquatic and terrestrial insect life completely crashing. Geoengineering Watch acknowledged that in 2012, that insect populations were collapsing. The climate science, or the science community, tried to marginalize us for that. Now they're admitting to it. We have another condition. For those that are trying to grow gardens, to answer your question, their production is likely falling very rapidly. In addition to the soils being compromised, soil microbiome being harmed, soil pH values being affected, we have a condition called VPD, vapor pressure deficit. These particles, depending on what they're dispersing, are desiccants, so it's reducing atmospheric RH, relative humidity. This may be one of their goals because water vapor is also a greenhouse gas. They may be trying to reduce atmospheric RH in their myopic attempt.
My God, man, he just talked about VPD, and all I could think is vain people deceive. Because Dane Wigington, when asked a direct question like, what can we do about this? I mean, that's the heart of the fear porn cycle. If somebody is scaring you on YouTube and their intention is to scare the shit out of you, then your immediate question should be, what can I or should I do about this? If they do not have an answer, they are not an activist. They're an infotainer. They're doing this for the attention, for the money, not for the cause. If asked the exact same question, my answer would be simple. let's get the Environmental Modification Accountability Act published and legalized, not just at the United Nations, not just at the national level, but at the state level, that we build sensors to collect rainfall, to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt when, where, and who is geoengineering, modifying weather, that we have a public registry of all atmospheric experimentation, that the gloves come off, the blinders come off, and we know this is a solution. Where's your solution, Dane? Where is your solution? Dane Wigington talking about VPD when asked a direct question from RFK, where can people see this in their own lives and what can they do about it? Well, look up, see the plane farts making the clouds, and then if you want to do something about it, petition the IATA, the ICAO, the FAA, get in the airline industry's face, go to these climate cult meetings they have, Davos or whatever, and say, hey, you sons of bitches, y'all flew here on private jets that are loaded with jet fuel, and the jet fuel has all these metals in it, and they're actually making the clouds, which are the greenhouse, and we don't like that. You could knock it off. How about you do something about that? Watch my last video on how non-CO2 emissions are finally getting targeted by the IATA, and you'll see this is a serious problem. It's a cirrus problem. CIRRUS.
To slow the visible signs of the warming. But what VPD does, if there's not enough humidity, the organism, be it trees, other types of flora, vegetables, they shut down their stomata, their respiratory ports. They stop breathing. Forests do not smell.
Dane Wigington's persistent deception causes you to stop breathing. That's what he just said. VPD causes you to stop breathing.
Like forest anymore because the trees are not respirating. They're not absorbing carbon. They're not releasing oxygen. Now we know that forests, even like the Amazon, are not carbon sinks anymore. They're carbon sources. Same with boreal forests. VPD is a massive factor in this equation related to climate engineering, and no one's acknowledging that. So again, less plant growth, plant dying, the effects of the UV radiation, which can cause leaf scorch and bark scorch. There's many, many signs of this, and we're simply asking, Robert, for people to investigate. We don't ask anybody to believe anything we say. We're saying, look at the film footage, look at the governmental documents, look at the patents, listen to the testimony of former Air Force generals and so forth. And we're just asking them to look at the data, and starting with the Dimming documentary is a great place to start.
Dane Wigington, thank you so much for your activism. Thanks for your integrity and your courage, and thanks for joining us today on the podcast.
It's a pleasure and an honor, and thank you for giving a voice to this issue and encouraging those that follow you and all your courageous work to investigate this as well.
Dana, how can our listeners support you?
Just simply help to share our data and get us past social media censorship. Geoengineeringwatch.org is non-political. We don't advertise. Our only goal is to bring this issue to the full light of day.
Yeah,
the public has a right
seriously censored.
What's the name of the organization again?
Geoengineeringwatch.org. It's important to put the watch part on because otherwise you go to a pro geoengineering website. So it's letters GEO, the word engineeringwatch.org.
Dana Wigington, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for your courage, your integrity.
All right. Well, guys, that's it. Dane Wigington doing what he does best. That's telling part of the truth and not really giving any solutions, and just really saying everything is a secret government program. And I don't see it that way. I do believe the possibility of the CIA specifically, because let's be real. Even David Key said it would only take 17 planes to geoengineer the whole damn planet. Keep that in mind. 17 planes. He said we could start out with 3. So of all the planes on the planet currently in the air, and we're sitting at, what is it? 11:51 on the East Coast. And right now, as we speak, this is the amount of planes in the air. These are live, okay? This is how many planes are in the air on a worldwide basis right now, at this moment, okay? But geoengineering is all of the planes. Every single plane is on it, okay? I call bullshit on that. I have read every single geoengineering proposal from these. The University of Calgary reports from David Keith, where they talked about what amount, poundages, planes, types, all of that. From Alan Robach, all of their peer-reviewed journal entries on what they would need to geoengineer. And it was like 10 or 15 planes, not the 100,000+ that are in the sky. Are the planes emitting all of these metals that are making the clouds? Is that geoengineering? Yeah, damn right it is. But is it a secret government program to outfit every single plane with nozzles and bottles and spray these chemicals? No, it is jet fuel. So at the end of the day, that is my opinion. My opinion is based on facts. My facts are available on my websites for your review. weathermodificationhistory.com. Go to climateviewer.com/geoengineering, climateviewer.com/cirrus clouds matter. And go to climateviewer.org if you want to see maps of where actual weather modification projects are going on. And my solution, the Environmental Modification Accountability Act, is available at climateviewer.com/enmod, ENMOD. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And thank you all for sticking with it so long. I did not expect this to go, where are we at? 3 hours 11, 3:11. It is time to roll. I've got a 50-hour work week ahead of me, which I absolutely love, which means that I've got to get up in, what time is it now? No time at all. So I'm going to end it right there. And for those who say, hey, Jim, you cocky little shit, why are you, picking on Dane? Not picking on Dane. I'm sure Dane's intentions are good. Dane is probably a good person who really believes what he believes. But I disagree with his ideas. And I think that some of them are a bit dangerous. And I don't think that they're helpful to the cause of fighting geoengineering and dealing with pollution. So that's why I always say, with information comes power. With power comes great responsibility. So please take the information that I provide on my websites and these videos and use them to attack ideas, not people. Love you, mean it, guys. If the video resonates with you, leave me a comment because I love hearing from y'all. First time here, be sure to subscribe and click the bell. Yeah! Remember, it would be impossible for me to do this without your support, so please join my Patreon or buy me a coffee on PayPal. And always, attack ideas, not people.